So
Yeah.
one thing I wanted to talk about with this is Percy Jackson stuff.
Yes, we
It's
could
because
start
there
there.
was some Percy Jackson stuff. I saved a note with like the actual quotes, but it's not pulling up on my iPad, so I can't read it. But
Oh.
one thing that was fun, that's been fun for me to experience in my like notifications over the last couple days is Rick Riordan and Becky going to Boston Pride slash the No Kings Day protest.
Mm-hmm.
It was like both of them at the same time, and so he
Yeah.
posts this picture of him on Saturday wearing like one of those like dad like Hawaiian shirts and
Mm-hmm.
holding like the pride flag that is the inclusive pride flag with an
Mm-hmm.
umbrella that was also rainbow. And also he had a hat on and you could see on the hat it said yes, like yes queen on like the front, and I was like, "Oh my god." And he posted that being like, "Oh, going to Boston Pride Parade is always really fun," and said like, "Oh, so if you need a happy thing about your dad, like here's some like nice dad energy if you need that for tomorrow."
Oh.
And I was just like, and the best part of that, I was like, I was trying to figure out like what is the other part of his hat? Like it looks like it says but yes queen. I was like, why would it say that? And somebody in my comments was like, I bet the other part of it says no kings. And I was like, oh my. And
He
then
would. Yep.
Becky like reposted or however you put that on threads,
Mm-hmm.
the like pride like theme thing was no kings but yes queen. For because they that was actually really smart of them. They combined the pride like parade slash just pride
Mm-hmm.
with the No Kings protest. There's a million people there, like literally 1 million people at the
Yeah.
Boston one, and including Rick and Becky. um,
Yes.
and so it was really nice seeing that, and also a couple of the writers that I follow and leave alone because I'm nice.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling people who are watching to do that too on social media, posted things about being at one. Charlie, who plays Luke, posted being like in a protest in LA.
Mm-hmm.
Who else? And then of course them. That's like the main people that I saw Percy Jackson related that were doing things, and I was like, this is a good sign that these people
Mm-hmm.
are just posting about this and not worrying about any bad effects of them posting something like that.
Yeah.
That was very nice. And so every couple hours at least, I get some comment of somebody crying about Rick looking like that at a Pride festival, especially
Mm-hmm.
this year. Like all these other corporations and organizations and publishing houses and other people are getting like afraid to do like Pride stuff the way that they used to.
Mm-hmm.
But not them.
Yeah.
Nope. And it's just really nice to see at least like one person left me a comment that said like the Percy Jackson fandom is in a perpetual thing of being grateful that we picked the right author, and I replied to them and I was like, it wasn't a competition but we won.
Yeah.
Like we definitely won somehow. We and I mean, if you're gonna like pick an author that's coming out with books for like children or teens in general, if you pick the one that humanizes child abuse victims, usually you're probably going to have a good chance of it being a good experience
Yeah.
over, that other person.
Yeah.
So many comments were alluding to her or just talking about how much I'm like, and somebody said like, "Oh, we can hold this over Harry Potter fans' heads," and I didn't reply, but I was like, "We can literally hold everything over their heads. Like
Mm-hmm.
the limit does not exist for the amount of things that we can hold over their
Yeah.
heads. Just even just with like Rick Riordan, not even just with anything else."
Yeah, I kind of love how people that started out on here as Harry Potter accounts that were a little bit more positive in the fandom have switched gears to let's tear these books apart. Like, let's find every single, like, part where there is a plot hole, where these things don't make sense together and stuff. And I know at least one person that I follow is trying to fund a gender affirming surgery by doing that. So like,
Good.
yeah.
That's the exact sort of way, if you're going to talk about it, that's the
Hmm.
way to talk about it. If you're going to do it, that's the way to do it still. I will say that I saw somebody like just post like a screenshot of Rick's post of his Pride stuff.
Hmm.
And there are people in the comments being like, who is that and what books do they write? Because can I go buy all of them? And so
Yes, it's
there's
like
still
please do.
people, yeah, and there's still people that don't know or like don't realize that it's him. Even after being on the New York Times bestseller list for the last like 15 years, I think he said.
Yeah.
Something like that for since like 2013, I think. They've been
Hmm.
on the children's like New York Times top 10 like bestseller lists since then. And he used this is like the way that like why I like Rick and Becky so much is that they have a platform but they use it in very like strategic ways. And so not
Hmm.
only did he make that post helping people who have horrible dads, which thank you, and
Yes.
or are queer or both, when he posted about how long Percy Jackson's been on the bestseller list, on the bottom of it, he was like, "This is why I'm always campaigning for them to make like a separate debut authors list so that more new authors could be seen." Because
Hmm.
he's like, "I've been on this list for like 15 or whatever years in a row. What about the new people that are just starting? They deserve to get attention for that kind of thing too."
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, that's the way to use that kind of stuff to try to make other people get attention.
Hmm.
So the other thing he said that I really enjoyed that I wanted to read from, but my technology isn't working, is he got a Goodreads question. There's a Goodreads question that we'll talk about that is going to annoy me already, but
Hmm.
this isn't it. This was somebody asking him like, what do you think about the future of children's literature?
Hmm.
And the thing that I liked about what he said, besides everything that he said, so if you haven't read it, like go read it. He linked to it on his Blue Sky account because it was, I think, a question that he usually doesn't get asked very often.
Hmm.
But besides everything that he said that I loved about it, the majority of thing he said about it were just he just listed all the different ways over history that people have tried to say that like this generation of children is somehow less than or worse or going to ruin everything or won't be creative or won't read books or will somehow be the one to, let everybody down in some weird way. And he
Hmm.
just like listed off since like the 1500s, basically,
Yeah.
every generation of how they thought that something was wrong. And I know we've said that sort of thing before, like the things that people say about like your phones is the exact same thing people used to say about playing video games when I was in high
Hmm.
school. It's the same thing that they said before that about grunge music. I vaguely remembered that stuff. And before that, it's just there's just always some new technology that people don't understand that they think is going to like ruin children somehow. And it
Hmm.
never does. And so he was just basically saying like I just bank on the fact that children will always find a way to prove people wrong. And they'll never and he basically said the idea of children's literature is to kind of keep like the fire burning for people who need it until they get to until they like move on and then the next generation of people keep it going. And I'm like,
Hmm.
yeah, that's what anything you do for children literally is just like I'm going to do this so it keeps what I loved when I was growing up keeps going so that more kids can have it than I did, and then when those kids grow up they do the same thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, that's all children's literature is supposed to be, and considering that who knows what's going to happen with it when Trump remembers that it exists,
Yeah.
something bad. But no matter what, like it's there, and here's Rick Riordan in a year when people are trying to threaten people with prison time for writing about queer stories. And the only book he's coming out with this year is a book about Will and Nico, who
Hmm.
are not only one is gay, one is bi, but they're both under the age of 18.
Yeah.
And they're openly this is the second book with them being openly gay together.
Hmm.
And so and also like co-writing that with an openly gay author who is a man of color too, which is always a good plus. And so that's the kind of thing you hope for, but it's just I generally wonder like what will happen. when he puts out that book, if there'll be like weird pushback by somebody by then, or if Trump will be too distracted doing something else horrible. And so
Yeah.
they'll be able to just put it out without any bigger issues than they would already usually probably get putting out a book like that.
Yeah.
Um, the one aside that I'm going to try to remember is Walker Scobell has a movie coming out finally this
Hmm.
summer that he quite literally filmed 2 years ago,
Hmm.
a really long time ago. He filmed this movie like right after season one stopped filming. Like season one stopped filming, and then like 2 months later, he did this movie right before the writer's strike started. So in
Hmm.
like 2023, something like that. It was like
Yeah.
kind of in this weird post-production limbo for the longest time. It used to be called Blood Knot. Like
Hmm.
it was listed on his Instagram. No, on his IMDb that way, but now they're like changing the title to Looking Through Water or
Hmm.
something,
Yeah, it's like
whatever.
fishing related, right?
Yeah. And it's basically, another role where he's playing a teenage character that has an emotionally unavailable father.
Yeah.
Like literally every role he's ever played. And all I know about the him playing this role is that there's pictures of him filming where he has like a black eye as part of the role.
Hmm.
And that's it. And that I didn't recognize him the first time I saw a picture of him in it because his hair looks so different from how it usually looks.
Yeah, I think it's part of that thing. It was definitely my generation in high school where it was wearing the hats all the time over the
Hmm.
curly hair makes it look a little bit straight, and then they have the curly ends.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they had him wearing like a wig or
Hmm.
something, just because I was like, his hair doesn't look like that, like
Yeah.
normally. And I was like, okay, I always think it's weird how Hollywood, out of like two out of the four movies he's done, pretty much they try to force his hair to be straight, and I'm like, just let his hair be this is
Yeah.
weird. Like I know it's like weird anti-blackness stuff, but it's just weird to see it pop up with like this tiny little white boy child that they're
Yeah.
still like being like you can't have curly hair. Like calm down. So that's supposed to finally come out this summer with a new strange name, whatever. Hopefully people will be able to watch it at some point and it won't be like this weird movie in limbo that might never come out anymore.
Hmm.
So and then the thing that I know is already going to make me very annoyed as the days go on is something that I think was good that Rick also posted on his Goodreads, where
Hmm.
somebody was asking him like if Rachel would be in the new season, and then
Yeah, the
if
one they're filming right now, season 3.
yeah, we're gonna God, we're gonna be filming very soon, and if the dam scene would be in it, and he was like, "Oh, the dam scene's absolutely gonna be in the episode." Like, goodbye. Like with like wondering about that. Like that was the first thing he said. Like, yes, absolutely, that scene is gonna be in the episode. But one point he made, just in general, before
Hmm.
even going into the stuff that people are gonna be immature little baby people about it, about like how TV shows work, is that he pointed out that like that episode isn't even written yet. And it's
Hmm.
like, yeah, can you guys remember that one of the best like creative decisions I think that this show does,
Yeah.
and I don't know why people think this. I guess maybe this is I think this is how TV used to work when they would work actors to death and
Yeah.
have them do it filming for like 9 out of like 12 months a year. That was back before the last writer's strike in 2007. But uh, anyway, he was saying that the I think one of the things that this show does that makes it really good is that they are writing the episodes as the season is going on, and
Hmm.
they are like going back and like working on them. Like in the like the behind the scenes documentary, there's parts of Walker talking about when he's supposed to be in school and he wandered off to read the scripts that the writers were still working on that weren't finished yet,
Hmm.
and would like compare them when he would get the finished scripts to see what they took out or things like that,
Yeah.
when he got the finished copy. And so that's just like a very good idea when it comes to creativity, is to constantly be working on it in that way where depending on what happens when they're filming, it's always a good idea to kind of like give yourself the space to go back and change things around or make things work in a way that fits better for whoever, for the actors, for anything. It's kind of like what I said about J.J. Abrams when we were talking about Star Wars, that he completely refilmed all of the beginning scenes with Rey and Finn because he
Mhm.
realized that John and Daisy's natural way of talking to each other fit the characters better. And so
Yeah.
they went back and refilmed all their first scenes in that way instead of the way that he originally wrote it because he realized that that way was better. And it's that kind of thing. It leaves it. That's why partly why they're able to start filming Titan's Curse so soon, because most of the cast are under the age of 18. They it takes like over a month to film one episode, and so they basically only need to have two episodes done, and then
Mhm.
they can start filming because that gives them another 2 to 3 months basically before they have to start doing a new episode done. And
Yeah.
so I'm sure they have more episodes than just the first two done, but it's also a good point to remind people that they don't have the episodes in the later part of the season done because they're still figuring out all those things and are taking they're not going to just like, write the entirety of Titan's Curse in 3 months and then be done with it. The
Yeah.
writers are working on it the entire season, basically. It's only like the last couple months that they're usually not writing anymore because they finish all the episodes that they're going to make. But it takes a while before they get to that point. And so the other part of that was Rick was talking about the same thing that Becky said, literally the exact same thing that
Mhm.
Becky said. And so I'm interested to see the difference in the way that people treat him
Yeah.
versus the way that they treated her. Like, his comments are off, so they can't harass him, I guess. But I also don't know if they would have the guts to do that. In the same way that they're okay with harassing his wife that he's been in a relationship with since he was 16. They're fine
Mhm.
with doing that, but apparently they don't want to talk shit straight to his face, which is an interesting thing that you're okay with. But he essentially said that they don't know if Rachel's going to be in season 3 yet because he was talking about how when it's a TV show, there's a lot of behind the scenes things. And so if they
Mhm.
got somebody to play one scene as Rachel in season 3, which would pretty much be the only thing she only be on screen for a couple minutes, like that one part that she's on the dam.
Yeah.
You would have to either find somebody who is a good enough like a good actress that would to play that part in the hopes that if season 4 and 5 happen, you can get them to like sign back on and also have the time in their schedule and stuff to come back as like a guest, like a recurring guest star basically
Mhm.
for season 4 and season 5 and just kind of hope that they could do that. Or you cast somebody who isn't like a good enough person for that role, but then is like, then what's the point of doing them at all in the
Yeah.
first place? And so he was saying like we don't know for sure if she's going to be in that episode or not. It depends on a lot of different things. But it also that is why those characters aren't in sometimes in the show because it's because of behind the scenes reasons like that.
Mhm.
And that makes sense. That's logical. Yes, that's correct. Like that's child actors are human beings. Like, do you guys know that? Do you guys know that like child actors that are cast on this show are not just avatars of your favorite characters that you can just poke and prod and make you do whatever the fuck you want? And so whoever plays Rachel, whoever that is, and just a reminder, she's probably not going to have red hair. So
Mhm.
just like put that in your head and just like get used to it if this kind of stuff is hard for you to understand. Put it in your head. She's not likely not going to have red hair because none of the main characters match their physical descriptions in the books. Zero.
Yeah.
None. Absolutely none of them do. The main cast, none of like the main characters of season 2, none of them look like the descriptions they have in the books at all. And so why would Rachel suddenly be the one that matches it for some reason? Likely no. And so like yes, this TV show is not going to cast somebody just because they have red hair. And also this TV show is not going to put Rachel in an episode for one episode when they don't know if when they're going to come back, how long that would take, like if that person would be available, like asking that actor, whoever it would be, to just not take anything
Mhm.
for like a year.
Yeah.
Like because if they filmed it like if she filmed her episode in like January or something, like probably the later part of the season is where those episodes would be, or
Mhm.
where the episode at the dam would be, since it's right before they get to San Francisco and everything goes like wild with Mount Tam and everything. Um, it would probably be in the last like 2 or 3 episodes where that would happen, and so they probably wouldn't film that until like January or something, like December, January, something like that. And so if they filmed it then, the season probably won't come out until a year after that, in
Mhm.
December of 2026. And so even if they started filming Battle Labyrinth the same way they did this season, it would be like probably around a year or so, a significant amount of time before they ever even knew that that would happen. And so you're asking an actor to just not work for a really long time. And if they're a good actor, like you would want for somebody like Rachel, they're going to be getting parts. And you're
Yeah.
basically asking that person not to take any roles at all for an unstable amount of time because they don't know how long it's going to take for a season that might not ever happen because they don't even know for sure if it will. Like, I
Yeah,
think that
he
it
didn't
will,
get
but they,
renewed for fourth yet,
yeah,
so
but they
yeah.
still don't know. And you're asking them to like not work like that without like a contract or anything in place. It's just unfair. They could make them sign a contract and make it where they couldn't do any more roles except for them, but that's kind of a shitty move to do, which is why they're not doing it.
Mhm.
Because it's just not really fair to do that to an actor, to like make them be stuck in this when they don't know for sure. And so you don't need like Rachel to be there in that scene. It's so easy to imagine ways that they could redo that a little bit to make it work.
Yeah.
Like they could have Rachel, when she shows up in season 4, mention to Percy that she saw him at the dam, and but Percy just like didn't notice her at the time because of everything that was happening. But she can
Mhm.
say, "Oh, I remember you. I saw you at the dam doing this and this and this," and he would be thrown off enough to want to get to know her, want to talk to her, and she would be bold enough still to write her phone number on his arm. So he remembers her number and calls her later in Battle of the Labyrinth season, which like the book we just read. Or
Mhm.
they could just have it happen like off screen. They could have somebody mention something that they saw some girl run through or something, and
Yeah.
have it be Rachel, even if we never see her, the same way that we hear Nico's tiny little baby voice in the casino episode in the background yelling for Bianca and stuff. There's just there's a lot of ways that they could write that scene in a slightly different way that opens up the idea of
Mhm.
introducing Rachel in the next season if she's not there. And so if the only reason that you think that she needs to be there is because she was there in the books, you're kind of like setting yourself up for disappointment.
Yeah.
And I more am just like surprised, I guess, that I haven't seen like Twitter like wanting to hurt anybody for him saying that. And it's like, it's just
Yeah.
interesting how he can say that, but Becky can't say anything. And she literally said the exact same thing as he
Yeah.
did. She may have said it in less words because she was leaving it in like a reply on Threads instead of like like a Goodreads blog. But they
Mhm.
literally said the exact same thing. They
Yeah.
both said this is how TV works. This is how behind the scenes stuff works. You don't need to know about this, but this is just how this works. That's why Becky said I can't change the industry and I wish that it would be different, but it's not.
Mhm.
And so it's like, are you gonna are you gonna be weird about this too? Probably. But it's just very weird to see fandom people deciding that a season that it's not going to come out until probably December of 2026 is already bad for everyone's favorite book. Like at least it's going to be
It's
everyone's favorite season by the time it's done filming.
Mhm.
So it's like, are you just doing this on purpose to psych yourself out for Titan's Curse?
Yeah, and I think we talked about this on an earlier episode, but like the only argument I could see is like, oh, well, if everybody isn't interconnected at camp, I'm not going to feel like the same love for camp and the campers. And it's like that's a really bad cop out.
Yeah, and it's also just like you're making like qualifications.
Hmm.
Like you're basically like trying to give a production that doesn't know that you exist an ultimatum. Like
Hmm.
and just you're basically like pronouncing how you're going to feel before you ever get there. And it's like
Yeah.
you could never know. Like you don't know how you're going to feel. Like just alone in the first season that we've already seen, the last episode when Percy comes back from not being obliterated by Zeus, the entire
Hmm.
camp is there like clapping and cheering for him and glad that he's there.
Yeah.
Did that scene not make you feel happy about camp? Um,
Yeah.
shouldn't it have? Like, you don't need to know who these individual, like, side characters or, I forget the word right now for people who show up that don't have, like, named roles or whatever, but you don't need to know
Hmm.
who any of those kids are, in order to see that the kids at camp are there. And it's also like, do you guys remember the plot of Sea of Monsters?
Hmm.
Like, do you remember that the entire plot of Sea of Monsters is that camp is in danger and that they get attacked when they're doing the chariot race? We know they're
Yeah.
doing the chariot race. Like Walker's mentioned the what are they called? The
It was
birds.
in the teaser trailer that
Yeah.
like the only teaser trailer we've gotten so far.
Yeah, and there's one interview that Walker did where he just like listed off all the different villains in Sea of Monsters like in a row from I'm sure how they filmed it. And
Hmm.
the what are the name of the birds? Uh
Scythian birds or something like that.
starts with an S. I can never remember it, but he mentioned them, and so it's like okay, so you know for sure that that happens where they get attacked when they're at camp,
Hmm.
doing the chariot race, in some way. And so the idea that camp is in danger is the entire point of everything driving that entire
Yeah.
season. And so there's likely going to be things on your screen between now and December of 2026 that will make you feel connected to the kids at that camp. Instead of convincing yourself that you're not going to like it by psyching yourself out because you're afraid of getting your hopes up, maybe, I don't know. Either way, instead of like convincing yourself that you're not going to enjoy something 2 years in the future, what if you just like, I don't know, wait? Like,
Yeah.
wait at least to see season two before making any decisions about what you think this show is like and then maybe like actually watch it and see what you feel then. Like it's just so weird to see people who say they're huge fans of this series go out of their way to try to ruin it for themselves
Hmm.
before it's ever even happened. It hasn't even happened. There is
Yeah.
0 days filmed for Titan's Curse, and there have been people for the last month that are so sure that this Titan's Curse season is not going to be good. They haven't even filmed it yet. They haven't even like gone to boot camp yet, where they probably haven't even met most of the people that were cast in the other roles yet.
Hmm.
And you're already deciding that it's not going to be good. And it's
Yeah,
like,
it's pretty crazy.
stop. And especially stop if all you're going to do is hold it up to a higher standard than you would anything else.
Yeah. Well,
Because this is ludicrous.
so what makes me curious is like I feel like I've seen the Twilight fandom talk about this, and we're not like huge parts of the Twilight fandom. I think you and me both get like content here and there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I saw them talking about how the Netflix animated series, like news has dried up about it. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's what people usually say, like, oh, Percy Jackson just needs to be an animated series so that way we can have book accuracy. But if you know they're trying it for Midnight Sun, which is also a book that is theoretically in someone's head. I haven't read it myself, but it's in Edward's head.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and they're having trouble making it work. I think it stands to reason that it's probably hard to accomplish any way you slice it.
Mm-hmm. And also, there's no guarantee that if they made it animated that it would be more book accurate than if they
Sure.
use the actual characters. I am so confused by that being something that people bring up. Why why would you ever want anybody but the actors we have to play any of these characters ever again?
Hmm.
Like, you have these actors that played all of these characters so well, hit them exactly how you would want them to be. Why would you ever want to replace them then with other people that you don't know? Like,
Hmm.
why? Like, why would you want that? Just, if that's the only thing you can come up with as a way to try to control this project, because that's essentially what you're trying to do. You're trying to control what they're making by thinking, like, well, if it's animated, then they'll be more forced to be book accurate. The only way you think that is because you watch anime.
Hmm.
Like, anime are, like, accurate to the mangas that come out about it, but that's literally how their industry works. Mangas exist to be adapted into animes.
Hmm.
And so animes that are adapted from mangas that don't follow the manga do happen, but they are, like, more rare, but that's because that is how that industry is set up. Mangas are written at the outrageously high rate they are, in the hopes that they will be adapted into an anime production, because they make so many animes in Japan. That
Hmm.
is not how that stuff works here. And so the same thing does not correlate to the United States. Just because you want something to be animated doesn't mean it's going to be exactly how you want it in the book. And even if they did, it still somehow wouldn't be what you want it to be, because it's not in your memory.
Yeah.
It's not like a feeling that you had when you were a child when you read these books for the first time, because that is not like a feeling that you can ever have happen again. And
Hmm.
so even if they did exactly what you want them to, you still somehow wouldn't like it, because that's just not something that you can ever replicate. You can
Yeah.
never replicate that feeling you had when you read something for the first time that you love. And so why don't you just let them make some art and enjoy what they're making in the
Hmm.
process, instead of spending all your time talking about how it's not good enough when you've never actually seen anything that they've even made yet.
They haven't even made it yet in this
No,
case.
like, they start filming Titan's Curse on August 7th, and so
Yeah.
they probably won't go up to do, like, boot camp stuff until after the 4th of July. Like,
Yeah.
they're not even up there yet. And so
But
if,
that
like, if
does mean they'll be in boot camp for Percy's birthday.
yeah, like, well, that's why they will be filming during Percy's birthday. They were filming during
Hmm.
Percy's birthday last year too.
Yeah.
But they also the Lightning Thief's, like, 20th anniversary is
Hmm.
June 28th, which is a Saturday, like a couple days before they would be going up there. Um, they like to announce things when they're about to do their boot camp or when they're doing it. Like
Hmm.
last year, they Comic Con was the end of July, and they announced stuff at Comic Con, which was the end of. They were about to start filming a week after that,
Hmm.
and so no matter what, they'll announce things at Comic Con because it's the same general weekend, like the third, I think, like the third weekend in July, and they're doing boot camp again, but also just, like, keep in mind that the 20th anniversary is, like, right at the end of June when they start their boot camp stuff in July, and everybody knows that. And so they could say things then too, or say things or let things out for season 2 or something else that they haven't even told us about yet.
Yeah.
That's always possible too. But they probably will do something around that time, because that's a day that people are already paying attention to.
Hmm.
Like like, I forget when it was, like 6 months. I swear it was like 6 months ago. Becky was like, everyone should pay attention to when the 20th anniversary is, and I was like, okay, I got that's in my mind now. Thank you, ma'am. And,
Yeah.
like, she wasn't, like, that obvious about it, but it was just like Becky Riordan way of, like, telling people to pay attention to that day, that they have things planned for that day. Um, and I was like, okay, I see what you're saying here. I'll, like, just keep this in my brain, tell Mandy about it, and pretty much nobody else,
Yeah.
because I don't want to make a thing about it. But yeah, and so there's probably going to be things around that time as well, leading up to things in the future. It feels absolutely crazy for it to have to defend like a show that has 2 seasons in production at the same time, and that people still think that nothing's going on.
Yeah,
I'm like, do you know how many things are going on right now?
probably way
Like
too much. Yeah.
so many things. Like even if we have to wait to see it, I would rather wait to see it when I actually want to see it and enjoy it, um, and have them be ready to tell me everything than to be rushing them to tell me on my timetable.
Yeah.
That's not that hard, guys. I swear
Yeah.
it's not. My God. Um,
My guess is that a lot of the same kids who were bitching about Becky and the minor characters not being casted potentially in seasons 2 and 3, that they probably didn't even see the Goodreads thing.
no, but they
Yeah,
will, because some of like the updates accounts were posting about it today, and so they're definitely going to see it now.
yeah,
And I didn't even look because I don't even want to see the stupid things they're going to be saying. I'm sure they'll
yeah.
somehow make it Becky's fault. Like somehow,
Somehow,
if
yeah.
somehow it's going to be her fault, because somehow whatever happens is always somehow her fault. I don't even know like what they think about Rick, if they think that his wife is this controlling, that she's somehow able to do all of this without even trying. Um, Whatever.
Yeah.
Uh, I think that's all the Percy stuff that was in the last couple days or so.
Yeah,
Uh,
so we have a couple things that we wanted to talk about. We're going to be one of the 10 million people that's made content on the Sabrina cover, but like we have a different kind of perspective of it after, and like me especially after talking it through, I think I needed to talk it through. Because I was one of those people that was initially shocked, but like I remember my first thought not being, "Oh my gosh, this girl is ruining feminism," but it's like maybe now suburban white moms will stop taking their 13-year-olds to her concert and being surprised it's sexual.
well, okay, so one thing when it comes to kids is I forget what big artist said this. Who knows? What somebody at some point in the last like 10 years or so said this, and I was like, yeah, that's exactly what it is. And what they're basically saying is that every time a song gets like huge on the radio, kids
Hmm.
are going to show up at your show because they just hear it and they like it. They just like the beat and the music and stuff. We don't When you're a kid, you don't really understand what the words are saying. You don't care about
Exactly.
what the words are saying either. But kids are going to show up at your show no matter what. If you have like a big song that's like a popular hit, that's going to happen no matter who you are and what kind of music you actually make. But you can't just like change your entire thing just because of that. Just like act like their entire audience is now children, because there are some children that go to her show. Like, can we get a grip? Like that's honestly that's like the whole thing about this Sabrina Carpenter thing, I know for sure like my way of looking at it will definitely be different from other people, because I don't fear monger. I don't use my own trauma that I've been through to fear monger like everyone else is doing in the last week. Like, do you know how weird it is as a child sex abuse victim when people go on these puritanical like tirades of just craziness, to be sitting here watching people being like, I'm not going to sexualize a child sex abuse. I'm not going to. And I'm like, this is the most I've ever seen anybody talk about child sex abuse victims ever. And
Hmm.
it's over a pop star that doesn't even mean anything. Like, people essentially took a couple pictures that she took for W Magazine and decided that they were comparative to Lolita. Why? Because they don't like her song.
Hmm.
I want you to admit it, even if it's just in your own head. You don't like her song. This has all happened because you don't like her new single, and you
Yeah.
are trying to find morally something wrong with her, because the younger parts of Gen Z do not know how to not like something without making it a moral failing. They
Yeah.
can't just not like something. They can't just say, oh, I don't like that person. I don't like that actor because I just don't like them. It has to be like, oh, they're secretly a pedophile. It's always like there has to be some morally thing wrong with them in order to like just, you can just not like someone. You can just say, yeah, her single isn't my thing. This entire thing happened because she put her single out. Some people didn't like it. And ever since then, they've just been trying to find something wrong with her to justify just not liking her song instead of just admitting you just don't like it. That's fine because there's literally nothing. There's nothing. There's nothing to go on. Like the pictures of her doing the Lolita is her laying in the grass by a sprinkler. If that is what it takes to be inspired by Lolita, every kid in the Midwest also wants to do a Lolita photo shoot and does in the summertime because we do that in the summertime. And the magazine that she did it for, all of this was for a photo shoot that she did for a women's magazine. Not even anything to do with her actual CD. Nothing to do with like anything actually that she's doing. She literally did a photo shoot showing off like clothes like famous people like this do for a women's magazine called W Magazine, and all of their photo shoots look like that. All of them are like old school Hollywood style where they're in a backyard where there's fake grass and like a sprinkler and they're like laying on the grass or they're laying on like one of those recliner chair things or they're by the pool or they're wearing sunglasses. They all look exactly the same. I found a post that posted all of them. Like Charlie XCX posted the exact same.
She's not little and blonde. Like this is one thing that gets me.
The exact same pose that everyone is posting about Sabrina. Nobody cared when Charlie did it because she didn't put out a song you don't like. And so you don't care. You don't care when she does it. But when Sabrina does, it's like, oh, she's like bringing up Lolita. Oh, she's sexualizing a 12-year-old sexual assault victim. Like, do you think that Sabrina Carpenter showed up to W Magazine and was like, I demand that you do this photo shoot? Like, that is not how photo shoots work just to start. But the majority of people, I am sure, didn't even know where that photo shoot even came from. Because I just kept seeing videos of overlays of those two pictures over and over again. And the amount of, like, epic reaching people are trying to do to try to, like, compare, like, the video you sent me of Becca Day sent me into another stratosphere because one of the pictures she used was her just like pursing her lips and comparing that to Lolita. I was like,
yeah, it was like a screen grab from the movie, right, or something.
So, I don't even know. I've never seen Lolita. Hey, you know either. What? I bet you $5,000 that nobody who is making all of these videos has ever seen Lolita.
Well,
ever.
And here's the thing about Becca Day's video, because I know you didn't finish it, was she started talking about how Lolita is a film that romanticizes little girls that should have never been made. She did not acknowledge that the original author intended this to kind of be a shock factor. Like, it was never meant to be romanticized. You were always supposed to think, even though you're in the main character's head, that he is a complete crazy person.
The whole purpose of Lolita, like the person who wrote the book, because it is a book, just in case people didn't know that, and then was turned into that movie. The entire purpose of that book and movie is to make the audience uncomfortable, to show what it is like for young kids, like a 12-year-old like that, when you are being sexualized by adults. The entire movie is trying to make you uncomfortable so that you understand how kids feel in that position. And instead, people are like, oh, they're romanticizing it. No, they're not. They're trying to make you feel like that so you don't treat kids that way. They're not it's not romanticizing anything. And like that, like maybe other people since that time have romanticized it because they miss the point. That happens a lot when it comes to like children and you know, abuse stuff. People tend to miss the point because they don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Yeah.
But like that's like the point of that in the first place. And also, Sabrina Carpenter is not at all for children. Like, I would never think that her main audience are kids. Like, even under the age of 18. Most people that I see making videos with like her songs over the last couple years have been like adults, like 20 and up. Like, she just went on a whole tour, and the majority, like, you can't do like stadium level tours if all of your fans are kids because they can't afford it.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't be doing that kind of stuff. Like, Sabrina Carpenter, for anyone who doesn't know, used to be on the Disney Channel. I
Mhm.
already forgot. She was on Girl
So,
Meets World.
yeah, so do you remember, did you ever watch Boy Meets World?
Yeah, I love Boy Meets World.
So she was supposed to be the girl version of Sean. Like
Yeah.
she was supposed to be the troubled one. She had a single
Hmm.
mom, and then they like made this weird plot where Sean ends up marrying her mom.
Hmm.
They did weird sexualization things in that nobody called out. Like I found out from a YouTube think piece because I never actually did finish the series. It
Hmm.
like lost me after a certain point. You know, I gave it a genuine honest try.
Yeah.
But there was a plot where her and Riley, the main character, are both crushing on the guy who's like the main guy, and the two of them date him at the same time.
Hmm.
Like, that's an interesting plot to put into a children's show.
Yeah. And like, so the point I'm trying to make when I bring that up is like, she used to be on the Disney Channel. She was on the High School Musical reality show thing, I'm pretty sure, that Olivia Rodrigo and that other guy, Josh, was on. I only know the other guy, Josh, because Olivia Rodrigo wrote all of her first, like, big CD about him.
Hmm.
And, like, Sabrina Carpenter was, like, the other girl in that situation that that guy was with instead of Olivia Rodrigo when she was,
Yeah.
like, singing about how sad she was that he was with somebody else. And like Sabrina Carpenter literally wrote an entire song on her last CD making fun of that Josh guy who was, because he came out as gay and then was like, actually, no, never mind, Jesus saved me or something. She wrote a song literally making fun of him for doing that and being like, you're a liar. And it was very obvious to tell she was talking about him. And so the point I'm trying to make here is that Sabrina Carpenter started off as a child, like a child actress,
Hmm.
and she wanted to transition to being an adult. She put out like four CDs that nobody cared about.
Hmm.
Absolutely nobody. Before whatever, I don't even know what the first song that was a huge hit of hers was. I've heard them all on TikTok, but I don't know some of their names. It doesn't really matter, but she was around in the industry for a very long time, just to like put that out there for anyone who decides to believe that she's an industry plant.
Yeah.
Because, like, no, you don't put out music all that time that nobody listens to if you're an industry plant. They would,
Yeah.
like, actually, implant you into the music industry and make you popular if you were something like that. And she wasn't at all. And so, her whole, I feel like I'm losing my mind because me watching her, not knowing anything about her, but just like seeing her, like her songs, a couple clips of her music videos where she murders her boyfriend in most of the music videos that she has, is she's very obviously somebody that plays up the part that she is short, that she's 5'1",
Hmm.
and that she is blonde. She dresses like an old school, like femme fatale girl, but she is not playing into the male gaze by doing that. She is literally torturing men. That
Hmm.
is her entire persona. That she knows that men are gross about girls that look younger than they seem. And so she's playing that up on purpose just to torture them. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh, do you think I'm interesting because I look like a young girl? Well, let me dress up and look like somebody over sexualized on purpose just to make, like, call you on the fact that you are doing that to me and make you feel shame.
Hmm.
Like, let me do a music video, many of them, in fact, where I catch you cheating on me and then murder you and get away with it and walk away laughing because I don't care about you. Let me do many things on stage where I act out sex acts on stage as part of my live show just to make a joke out of the fact that the only songs people know that she's written are ones that are all about sex, when that's not the majority of her music, but that is the ones that people fixate on. And so
Hmm.
she knows that. And so instead of like playing these games that like Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera and people like that were forced to play because the industry at the time of acting like innocent, like Britney Spears at the age of like 27 was still in interviews being forced to say that she was a virgin before she got married and just absolutely absurd. Like she was living in the same house as Justin
Hmm.
Timberlake and would be doing interviews saying that she was still a virgin. Like, shut up. Like,
Yeah.
no, you're not. And obviously, like, what do you mean? Like, of course you're not. But she had to say that stuff like that. She had to act like she was more innocent than she really was. She would do interviews talking about some of like her dancing or whatever and be like, "Oh, I didn't think that that was sexual at all." Like when she did "I'm a slave for you." she would do interviews being like, "Oh, I didn't think that would be sexual in any way." And it's like, "Shut the fuck up." Like, yeah, like yes, like for somebody like her, she didn't have control over her career and her image. And so she was being forced to do some of that stuff, sure,
Hmm.
and then being forced to act like more innocent to try to keep like some of the young fans that she had. But Sabrina Carpenter has given no indication that she is in that same position.
Yeah.
If like one day in the future we find out that she is, that's different. But right now she's not. And her doing a cover art for a CD that is called Man's Best Friend,
Hmm.
which is an allusion to a dog, which is a bitch, and saying I'm literally being a fucking bitch to them while she looks right at the camera where the guy thinks he's in control of her, but she's looking right at the camera to show like, no, I'm the one in control here.
Hmm.
That is literally all that CD cover is supposed to be, is to get people's attention. And people have decided that it's all these think pieces because you are obsessed,
Hmm.
obsessed with shaming people about sex and being fucking Puritans. Like, do you know how
Yeah.
ridiculous you have to be that child sex abuse victims are like, stop talking?
Hmm.
Like,
Well, and
stop
this is
talking
all
about us.
stupid. Like, why are we talking about this and not talking about all of this stuff going on in the United States? It feels like a stupid
Well,
distraction.
okay,
Like,
so one point that I wanted to make about this is something that's going on in the
well,
United States.
yeah.
Like this, like the way that people are fixating on this, the way that they have decided that because Chapel Roan hasn't said anything recently, so they can't rip her apart, they've now decided instead to fixate on Sabrina Carpenter because she put out a song they didn't like, and they were reminded that she is an attractive young girl who knows her shit and knows what she's doing and has a very like obvious cultivation of her image that she's doing that is like torturing men by knowing that they want her and throwing that in their face as much as humanly possible and making them feel upset about it because
Hmm.
they can't do what they want to do with her because she has control over them. Instead of that, they're turning against her in this way. They literally sound like people in the 1940s. Like,
Hmm.
and instead of it being like, oh, you're a slut because you're wearing like this, this clothes, or you're on your knees, or you're doing all these horrible things in the way that people used to say, they're just using different
Hmm.
language. They're like, oh, she's so male centered. Like, you're male centered.
Yeah.
Like, you're ripping apart a young pop star for what you think her CD is about when you've never even heard it before. You don't even know where those pictures come from. You don't know anything about Lolita. You don't even know what she's trying to say in her song because you probably have never listened to it before. You're running around the internet just like moral flagging every single day, being like, I would never sexualize a child sex abuse victim. I'm like, I guarantee that you already have. Like someone in your life you probably already have. You probably didn't know, maybe, that it was a child sex abuse victim, or you're one of those weird people that sexualize the Menendez brothers,
Ugh. Yeah.
like, or other people like that. Like, you probably have, and you probably just didn't know that you did it, but you're not like exempt from that. And also, I don't allow people to use my trauma to be fucking bitches.
Yeah.
Like if you want to like gang up on somebody and show how susceptible you are to the alt-right pipeline and fascism, where all it takes is a attractive female pop star coming out with a song that you don't like and you immediately just like jump on board, don't bring me and my trauma up. Talk about something else. Because I
Yeah.
know for a fact if you're out here slut shaming somebody in the way that you have with her, which there's nothing else that is going on but slut shaming with how people are discussing her.
Hmm.
Like, no. And so the only thing you're doing with that is that you're making it harder for any victim of any sort of sexual abuse to ever come forward. Like every time anything like this happens, I'm like, okay, it'll be like 6 months to a year longer that somebody who may be thinking about wanting to do something about it won't say anything now because
Hmm.
you're bringing so much shame about the way that people engage in this stuff.
Hmm.
And you're just bringing a lot of shame and making people afraid that if they tell somebody something that they might judge, that you'll turn on them in this same way. And so why would they tell anybody anything? They
Hmm.
won't.
Yeah, so I have a couple thoughts and like so first of all, what I feel like Sabrina is doing like and this just plays off of what you said with her using the sexuality as like a I'm gonna subvert, like the expectations with this, is that like when you're young and you're discovering your sexuality and you're discovering like how attractive do people find me and all of that, it feels like a type of sorcery sometimes, especially when you are blonde and petite and in my case a quarter Asian, and I had a bunch of young guys who thought like, oh, Asian girl without Asian parents, great, because like, I had negligent parents, so they didn't have to
Mm-hmm.
deal with strict tiger parents. And so like there was a moment as a teenager I leaned into that because it was like this is a way to control my environment. I don't like the way boys are looking at me necessarily. And so I can control which boys look at me and how they look at me by doing what I think they expect of me. And I mean the other thing too with this is in like assuming that being in the non-dominant position is bad is ignoring that even in the like most vanilla consensual relationship, like consensual situation, there is a lot of vulnerability, especially for women, like especially in a woman and man making love, because like things have to go into you. Like there's no
Mm-hmm.
other way to put it, but like that is very, very vulnerable. And to trust somebody just to do that, like you're giving up some power. So deciding who you're giving that power to is part of like how you keep your power in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's like explaining it well enough.
No, that is like you're giving that like trust over to another person to trust them with your body that way.
Hmm.
You have to, there has to be some sort of trust or something there, whether it's, even if it's not in them and yourself, that you can handle whatever situation might come up with that person.
Hmm.
You're never like, there, men can have a lot of control over you in those situations, obviously.
Hmm.
Like, I feel stupid me saying that, that's very obvious,
Hmm.
like, can we stop pretending like women in consenting situations involving sex are just like helpless, that they just have to like sit back and just do whatever the man says? Like, just because they want to do that doesn't mean that they're giving anything away, or that they're less than, or that they don't know how to handle themselves, or they can't handle him in some way unless he like literally forces them not to.
Hmm.
But that's not on her, that's on the guy. That's never on the girl, that's on the guy if they decide to push things past when they say no.
Yeah.
And so like
Well,
this sort of thinking of like demonizing her for being like more sex positive and not like wanting to be like facetious about it, or like acting like she is and then like backtracking like in prior like really like people like Britney Spears and stuff had to do that kind of thing. Instead she's just being honest about it. Like, she admits in like interviews, like, I have 3 songs about sex and they're my biggest songs because you guys are obsessed with sex. I don't only write songs about sex, but they're the only ones you guys want to listen to, so they become my biggest songs.
hmm.
And so it's like she knows what people are going to do, and so why not just like use that in a way to kind of put people in their place. Um, that's not a bad thing.
Yeah. I think the other thing too, and this is a point that Jean hit on, it's at the bald fist might be what's getting people because it is giving BDSM, but it's not giving, like BDSM without limits. Like it's giving a healthy BDSM thing, which does exist, like having guidelines, having rules that you're okay with in that type of situation, having safe words, all of that. Like it's still consensual.
And also,
And
like,
yeah.
I just need to say this. I am asexual. I am sex repulsed. I will likely never have sex ever my entire life. Do you guys know that BDSM is not what's in 50 Shades of Grey?
Yeah, because that's
Like,
he
the
ignores
idea
safe
that
words.
that poster, that album cover is BDSM is so, like, you are boring. You live boring lives, like more boring than a sex repulsed asexual that is traumatized from sex. Like, you are boring if you think that that is BDSM. That is so vanilla. That is so nothing. He is literally just touching her hair.
Hmm.
And you guys are all like up in arms, screaming about how she is catering to the male gaze, that she's like wanting to help men, that she's holding back. The idea that a man holding her hair is holding back feminism
Hmm.
is fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Absolutely bonkers. And the fact that people are just saying this with a straight face and they don't realize that they're a literal like caricature at this point is like fascinating to me if I had like any patience for watching it anymore.
Yeah, and I feel like my brain rotted, and like the part of the doubts that I started having were because of all of these think pieces. Because, like I said, my first thought was maybe people will stop taking their kids to our concerts now. It was not like, even though I was uncomfortable with it, it wasn't like, oh, she's terrible for doing this. It was just more like, okay, she's very clearly sexual. Cool.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's it. Like I don't even the think pieces are absolutely patently absurd. Um, my favorite part of them is when they are like disproven and they just refuse to admit it
Hmm.
because it would be pretty bad, right? To accuse a famous pop star of bringing up imagery of a sexual abuse victim if you weren't sure about that. Would you really want to accuse somebody of doing something like that if you weren't sure that you were right? Apparently, half the internet doesn't care about that.
Well, the one with her like sprawled across a bed, like the first thing I thought of was that Margot Robbie and like Leonardo DiCaprio scene that like I see memed
I
and
thought of Mad
clipped.
Men,
Yeah.
like the same general like time in history. Like the 50s and the Mad Men was like the 50s and 60s, like advertising agency executives, and the main guy like cheated on his wife 4 billion times.
Hmm.
But that's what that made me think of.
Yeah.
It There's a million different things that could be like a guy sitting on a bed, like leaning on a bed, looking at a girl that's like leaning up on it, trying to look sexy. Um, it doesn't have to just be Lolita, but it's just like a crazy thing that like you guys are just accusing of somebody of having these like ulterior motives. The
Hmm.
internet never lets these things go. And so she could show up on the internet tomorrow and show evidence that that is not what she was going for, that she's never seen Lolita, like she said, that she's not even in charge of that photo shoot. Other people were in charge of it. So even if they were the ones doing that, it wasn't her in charge of the whole thing, even though that's not what they're doing,
Yeah.
because every photo shoot of theirs looks like that. So if you think that that photo shoot was inspired by Lolita, then you think that W Magazine's entirety of like art department is just all about Lolita, because it all looks they're all the exact same. They're this exact same like poses and stuff that she did too.
Hmm.
And so it's just wild to see people accusing somebody of doing something like that, knowing that the internet will there will be people 10 years from now thinking that Sabrina Carpenter is a pedophile, because that is the way that
Yeah.
people talk about it.
Well, what gets me too is like this reversal that's happening of like, oh, she's always been for the men, like she was wearing lingerie at her concerts. Weren't you guys
Please.
a few months ago talking about how that's for the girlies? How and like I follow a lot of people that make their own clothes. Do you know how many people did that fucking Sabrina like
Mhm.
corset with the cutout of the heart?
Mhm.
Or like did anything with a cutout of a heart because of her in pastel colors? Like
Mhm.
it's just like she is for the girls, and there's something with girlhood like you look at Girls Next Level was like one of my like things when I was growing up. They still wear pink, like they
Mhm.
still lean into the pastel colors when they do photo shoots and stuff.
And
Holly and
Sabrina,
Bridget.
like, Sabrina also like interacts with a lot of like big stars at her level that are women too. Like, she
Hmm.
did, she did a like a some like Christmas songs with Chaperone. Her and
Hmm.
Chaperone did like a duet together. She shows up at Chaperone's concerts sometimes. She like went on stage and sang with Taylor Swift, which was like a big thing for her because there's videos of
I
her
think
like
she toured with her. That's like when she really
yeah,
blew up.
when she was like a baby, and then on somewhere during her Eras tour, she showed up as a surprise guest for one of the shows and went on stage, and Taylor let her sing some of her songs and stuff on stage. But it's just like she has like there's pictures of her and Olivia Rodrigo like talking at award show to like make people stop thinking that they don't get along because of that
Hmm.
stupid stuff with that guy a million years ago. And so it's like she's somebody who gets along with a lot of the big female pop stars. She, there's not like the competitions like there were in the past. She's like, making projects together with them. And
Yeah.
so she is not this like pick me girl that's like trying to get male attention at all. That's not who she's never given that indication ever. You're literally making that up. Like you're literally making that up. That because that's never been any of her anything ever.
Yeah.
And so it's been interesting, I guess, to see people literally make something up about her to try to justify not liking her because they just don't like her music. Like you just don't
Yeah.
like her song. And like it's just wild to decide what somebody is doing based on one song and her album cover art that most people don't even care about. Like
Yeah.
nobody even buys a CD anymore. Like
Seriously.
nobody even looks at it. It's going to be in the middle of your phone when you're listening to it on whatever you listen to music on, but no one's going to look at that.
Half the
Most of the
time, I don't
time,
even know which album songs came from
yeah.
anymore.
And most of the time when those now on the apps and stuff, if there's a music video for that song, they play the music video for it instead, or they play like, or on Spotify they have like their own like images or whatever that they play instead of like just the picture of like the album cover anymore. And so it was, I like didn't even pay attention to anything anyone was saying about this for like 5 days straight because I was like, how are people talking about an album cover so much? Nobody cares about albums anymore. Like I care about them, but most people who are not old don't care about that sort of thing anymore. And so I was like, I don't know what about this could possibly be such a big deal. It was when I saw people start like bringing up child sex abuse victims that I was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, leave us alone. We're not in
Yeah.
this.
Like we're fine. Like this is not Sabrina Carpenter is not the thing that is harming us at all in any way or
No,
form at
yeah,
all
if
right now.
anything's harming feminism this like past week is Adriana Smith, like, and like the fact that the baby was taken out of her and I don't know if she's passed yet. I think it was supposed to happen today or yesterday.
They took her
Um,
off life support yesterday, and so I hope sounds weird, but I hope she's dead because she has been like fully dead. She has been dead this whole time.
yeah.
Like that's like one of the wild things about this. Like they didn't take the baby out because it was like ready to go. They took the baby out because her body was decomposing.
Well, yeah, so what I read, and I haven't read anything in the past day or so, but like when I first started seeing that people were saying like, oh, the baby is born now, is that people were saying there was some sort of medical emergency that happened before that. So I have to think the baby was in some sort of distress,
Yeah,
like
they said
heart
that
rate dropped or movement stopped.
her body was literally like decomposing, starting to go into rigor mortis because she's dead.
Yeah.
And so they literally had to just like try to take the baby out because her body was just dying. Like I hope that all of the people in that hospital who had to work on her like sue every person in like the state legislature that made them do that.
Hmm.
Because those doctors and nurses and stuff, there is no way on this planet that they wanted to do that. They were forced by the state, like the laws that passed in their state. If they said no and got fired and arrested probably for doing that, for refusing to do that, they would have just replaced them with somebody else
Yeah.
that would. It's like you can be upset at them for not doing something, but it's also like missing who's actually responsible. The reason why that happened is because people in that state passed laws to do that that led to them literally doing an experiment on somebody's body. That's why that happened to her, and I legitimately hope those people get help because that is an outrageously traumatizing thing to have to do that to somebody for however long she was there, a long time,
Yeah.
really long time, and have to like watch her family go through that every single day, knowing that you're like the face of this happening to them because you're the one who has to sit there and talk to them about why this is happening to their loved one.
Yeah.
Especially the fact that the whole reason how she died in the first place is because doctors didn't listen to her when she said she was having horrible headaches, and which happens to a lot of black women, and she had a blood clot in her brain. And they didn't listen to when she said she was having these horrible headaches. They could have just listened to her, found her blood clot, and fixed it, and she would have been fine. But they didn't listen to her, and so the blood clot went undetected until it killed her. And so all around, it's just like nobody listens to this woman except for her like uninhabited body when she's dead, and they try to force her to stay alive. Like I get that some of the stuff with like the Sabrina Carpenter stuff, and other things like that that have been happening recently. I know that it's partly people looking for something to like obsess over and get mad at that feels like more helpful is not the right word, but like you feel like you're doing something, like you have control over it
Yeah.
in some way, because there's so many things going on that you don't have control over. But I also need some of you to get a fucking grip, because just the hypocrisy of what you're saying, and like just seeing the things you're saying and not thinking about what you're even doing, it's just like wild. Like, even, you know, when we were talking about the Epic the Musical stuff a couple months ago, and how their fandom was harassing one of their artists, where Jorge sort of, but not really, like said something about not like harassing people. People were calling that artist a pedophile because they made fan art of like Zeus and Odysseus like having sex. And I was like, I can like verify, because my mom's been on vacation in Italy. Most of the statues about the Greek gods, they're all naked.
Yeah.
And so it's really weird to be like to the point that my mom asked me if it was okay for her to send me those pictures, or if I wanted to see them before she sent them to me, because she's a wonderful human being, where she asked me that before sending them to me, and like apologized because her boyfriend sent one without like that, because he thought it was funny. And she was like, is it okay that he sent that? I'm like, yeah, I don't care when it's like art. Like, that's
Yeah.
just art. That's not, there's nothing like sexual about it. I'm fine seeing it. Like, you, and I told her, like, you can send me pictures of whatever like that. I'm not going to get upset about it. But still, like, my mom was asking me that stuff because they're all naked, like literally all the time, in all of those like old statues and stuff. And so saying that about people in Greek mythology particularly is weird, because they were a lot more open about just nakedness in general, and the gods literally have sex with everything, like everything in the old myth. And so it's even weirder to be puritanical about sex when you're talking about the Greek gods specifically. And it's even weirder when you consider fandom, that to call somebody a pedophile because they drew fan art of two characters like that, like half of people in fandom would be in jail right now if that was fandom. That's just normal. That's just normal, like making art. You're not doing anything bad. You're not doing anything wrong. But they were calling that artist a pedophile because they made fan art. It's not even about real people. It's fan art.
Yeah.
They literally started like, and it's the same thing. Some of them just didn't like their like drawing style in some of their animations. And in order to justify not liking them, they suddenly found that old picture and started calling them a pedophile. And it's like, you're calling someone a pedophile, like, because you don't like a drawing they made about people that aren't even real. Like, they're not even real people. What are they attracted to? Odysseus and Zeus are old.
And I think Telemachus is supposed to be like 20, you know, like,
Yeah, like, it was Odysseus and Zeus. Zeus is like bazillion years old, and Odysseus is a full-ass adult
yeah, at
in the
least
Odyssey.
40, at least.
Yeah, so it's like, what children are present? And
Yeah.
like, when you say that, like, this is like the thing that freaks me out about this stuff, is that if you call somebody a pedophile who is just drawing fan art or making fan fiction or fan works in general, that is between two male characters especially, and neither one of them is a child, then what is pedophilic about it? Because you're basically saying that if you're gay or make queer art, that means you're a pedophile.
Yeah, it's
Because what
strange.
else could be, what else? What else? What else are they doing that could be? And even if you make fan art or fan fics or whatever with kids, or like a character that isn't over the age of 18 or whatever, you're still not a pedophile, because you're just making fan art of something. You're not like going out there and actually trying to find children, because for the 7 billionth time in my life, pedophiles are not sexually attracted to children. They want power. They want power. And if you were sexually attracted, or if you wanted to find somebody that you had total domination over, that you could control everything about them, and you would want to go after children, you wouldn't be spending your time in fandom making fan fiction, like writing fan fiction or drawing fan art, those things take hours and hours and hours of your life to finish. You would just be on the internet trying to groom somebody.
Hmm.
You wouldn't be like doing this on the internet in this way. You wouldn't be spending all of your time trying to be artistic. You would be finding a kid to groom. Like that's what pedophiles would be doing. They wouldn't be, they're not the ones that are actually making this shit most of the time. They might be the ones trying to ask people to make certain things in too specific of a way that you can tell to fuck off. But they're not the ones behind making this art, because why would they spend all this time doing that? If that's not what, if they're just doing it to get something else, they would just spend their time doing it to get something else. They would just spend their time getting what they actually want. Like making fan art doesn't do any of that. It just,
Yeah.
you just sound like a literal crazy person. Like I have to say that just because like today I got people on some of my videos that are like testing just my will to live, of talking about like genuinely CSAM, and thinking that anything that is not real, like fan works, could be considered that. And me telling them, have you looked up what CSAM means in the country that you live in? Because I guarantee you that you haven't, if you think that anything that isn't real could be characterized as that. And then I literally posted it, and the person then like highlighted parts of it and said that I was wrong about it. The parts that they highlighted in it was the parts where they were describing the sort of things that are in CSAM and being like, see, I'm right. It's because people could make drawings of this. And it's like, no, CSAM is about real children.
Hmm.
Real. It specifically mentions in it that is furthering the victimization of children, of the victims that is in the CSAM. There are no victims when you are making fan art because they're not real.
Yeah.
The characters don't live. They're not real people. They don't exist. And so CSAM will never be books, movies, TV shows, drawings, fan art, animations, like edits. It doesn't matter what it is. It will never be any of those things because it's not real. Like, do you know how crazy it is to see people talking about CSAM only about fan fiction?
Yeah. Like
Like, only
written
about
fan
things that
fiction.
aren't real? Like, do you know that there's actual CSAM is out there on the internet of real children? And that it's just out there. And nobody cares about that. Like, nobody really talks about it too much. And I get why it's a very uncomfortable thing to know that it's out
Yeah.
there.
Well, and I mean, I would hope most people don't even know where it is. You know, like what I mean, that most people wouldn't even know how to access it to complain about it in that way.
Yeah. But it's just genuinely like an absolutely crazy experience to see people thinking that seeing a ship that they don't like on AO3 is child sex abuse material. When, like, to be like abundantly clear, child sex abuse material are photos and videos of children being raped.
Hmm.
Like, that's what it is. I have
Yeah.
a hard time looking into it purely because I'm always scared that there's things of me like that out there. Like, I don't know. I
Hmm.
I like I want to be logical about it and be like my dad was not logic, like not good with like technology at all. Like he never knew how to like use the internet or do anything. But part of the scary stuff of people of things like this is that there are just like photos floating around places. People find them and they put them on Pornhub or wherever the other sites besides them are. And they just kind of put them out there. And there's entire like nonprofits whose entire job is taking tips from people to try to figure out who is in these videos or who are
Hmm.
in these pictures, to try to figure out who these victims are, because there's so many of them out there and that's somebody. And I could like, I don't know if my dad did that kind of thing, but he could have, and I would have no idea, because it's not like he would have told me or anyone else for that matter if he did that. There's no way that anyone can ever like definitively say that it's not out there, because it could be anywhere. And every
Hmm.
child sex abuse victim worries about that, especially if it's a situation like that where somebody who had total control over you could have been doing anything and you wouldn't have known because you were too young, or just you don't remember because you blocked all of it out, or like both, or because you just don't know. It's just that's the stuff that matters with that. And it's just crazy to see people talking about it in this context that doesn't exist. Like if the only problem that child sex abuse victims had is that sometimes people write stories about us on AO3 in a way that we don't like, our lives would be so fucking good. Oh my God. I would sleep for like a year straight because I would be able to actually do that. If that was my biggest problem, or our biggest problem in general as a community of sorts. We have so many other problems that
Yeah.
it just feels it's they're parroting the Project 2025 stuff and they don't even know that they are.
Yeah, like both of these instances are people just like they're getting so up in arms about shit that like they don't need to be right now. Like and there's bigger fish to fry with these issues, but these are just things to direct your anger at for the moment that don't matter.
Yeah, and like trust me, I understand the phenomenon of
Mhm.
feeling like things are out of your control, and so you get mad at something that you know.
Yeah.
But like when I've done that in my life, I've always been very self-aware of knowing like I'm just mad at this random thing or person that I will never have any contact with because I can't be mad at the person I'm actually mad at. And so this is the way that I can handle it. I'm aware that I'm doing it, that none of this really matters, but this is just a way for me to cope with like the other things that I'm angry at. That's fine, but also there's a difference between doing that and then like privately, like in group chats or whatever, and getting it out of your system versus like making videos that are very obviously made to go viral on TikTok, accusing famous people of all kinds of just depraved things.
Mhm.
Even just like the artists in the Epic fandom, just normal people that are fans like you, and accusing them of horrible things because you just want to feel like you have some control. Um, find it literally any other way.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
literally do anything else. Because one thing I wanted to bring up that a mutual of mine told me about that I remembered today is that in China, China has a lot more strict laws about open like queerness and especially about fan fiction.
Mhm.
I can't remember when this was. A couple years ago, Stephanie Sue, who is getting a lot more positive attention now for her true crime channel. I've been watching her videos since 2019.
Yeah.
And so in like 2022 or something, on her original like mukbang channel that she still had, she did an episode telling the story about, she started talking about like Chinese kind of stories because her husband is a Chinese immigrant. And she told this story about how there was somebody who wrote like a RPF, which is like real person fic, which is where people write stories about like the actors or whatever in something that they like. And this
Mhm.
person wrote this fanfic about two real like actors in some TV show or whatever getting together. People do that sometimes. I don't like real people fic, but some people do. Whatever. And so she wrote one, and the fic became like so huge because it became like this huge scandal in China because of people being scandalized by her writing it about like the actors as opposed to like their characters, to the point that people started like thinking that the actual actors were actually like together in real life, and to the point that one of the actors had to publicly say something about it. And because of how big that fan fiction got, they banned like whatever version of AO3 they had in China at the time
Mhm.
because of that one fan fiction. And the actor that was in the middle of all of that like basically stopped acting because of like people, it like ruined his career because that's like a dangerous thing. Like, anyway, there are people in China right now that are writing, queer fan fiction that are getting arrested by the government.
Mhm.
Like, actually arrested by the government for writing queer fan fiction stories because they likely are queer themselves.
Yeah.
That's real. That's happening right now. Like, that's what these people want. that are talking about fan fiction stuff in this way. You want to criminalize fan fiction. And like I said this in that video, but I was like, do you know that you not seeing a ship on AO3 that you don't like is not a federal crime?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you know that you feeling uncomfortable and not understanding why somebody would write something is not a crime? It is not a crime that your feelings got hurt. It is not a crime that you don't understand why somebody would write something. The majority of the most like stigmatized like ships in that sort of a way of like, oh, that's a minor in it, are usually written by people that are sexual assault survivors, especially child sexual assault survivors. Usually we're the ones writing things like that because it's our way of trying to process what happened to us. By taking control of it, by making like fictional characters kind of go through the same sort of things to try to understand how we feel about it. A lot of child sex abuse victims read stories like that. Like if you write stories involving anything with those sort of themes, it's guaranteed that some of your audience are people like us.
Yeah.
And so some of us don't like that stuff. I usually don't if there's a lot of like sex related stuff in it because it gets to be like too much. But there are a lot of people that do, specifically because they're just trying to figure out how they feel about this stuff. And so, like you say that you're doing it to try to help us, but all the people that I see you arguing with are people like me who are victims.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like you're blocking me because I'm pointing out that you don't know what the definition of CSAM is. And you're saying that you're doing this to protect child sex abuse victims. I'm one of those. But you've been yelling at me and then blocking me and being so sure that I'm a horrible person. You haven't actually talked to me long enough to even find out that I'm the person you think that you're trying to protect.
Mm-hmm.
You're not protecting any of us. You're arguing with us and calling us bitches. Like, I've seen multiple ones of my mutuals do that with them, which is why I finally, like, gave in and was like, what is going on? And asked one of them what this entire thing is, because I've done everything in my power to try to ignore this entire situation in fandom, because I know that it's stupid. And I know that it would just drive me insane. It is stupid, but I'll, like, take it upon myself to shame these people. Because if you're going to take away, like, time and energy for, like, the organizations that are out there that are trying to investigate through tips about CSAM, there's a warning when you look them up that CSAM has to be real people. It is not fictional characters. Please focus on real children.
Yes.
And so they would say that because there's been so many people trying to report fan things of not real people that they have to, like, specify, don't do that, because you're literally wasting their time. They only have as much time as they do. All the organizations like that got all of their budgets cut by Trump. And so they have even less money than they did before to investigate these things, which take a lot of time to investigate things like this. And so you're taking even more of that time away by them looking into tips genuinely, because you never know if it's true when you're just mad about a fan fiction that you saw.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are you doing? Like, genuinely. I don't even know what to... It's just so wild to see, to remember when Trump won and people were like, I'm not going to fall for any of his shit. I'm a good person and I'm susceptible. Like, the fact that there's an entire trend right now of I'm not going to fall for this propaganda. Sure. Like, as you're all falling for so many other kinds. Like, I didn't do that trend because the moment that you say that you're not ever going to fall for that propaganda means that you're absolutely going to fall for it.
Yeah.
Because, like, the moment you think you can't be manipulated, you're already being manipulated by somebody. You just don't realize it, because no one is above that. No one is above that experience. Like, I can be gaslit by somebody. It doesn't matter if I know all this stuff about it. I can still be gaslit and abused and used by someone because I'm a person. That's just part of the human experience. Somebody can always use the things that you care about against you somehow. And it's never your fault that it happens, but it's just because you know about it doesn't mean that you're somehow never going to experience it ever again. You might notice it, like, faster, especially if you have people around you that also know these things and can point that stuff out to you sooner. But you're still possible to experience it.
Yeah.
Like, one of the things I thought was interesting too about Sabrina Carpenter is that her aunt is, like, a mega Scientologist.
Yeah, the person who's the voice of Bart Simpson, I don't remember her name, but
Yeah.
like that's what her aunt's famous for besides Scientology.
Yeah, and so I think it's very interesting to see like her persona is so against everything to do with Scientology. Scientology is very slut shamey and things like that about sex and just showing your skin and like womanhood and being proud of who you are and all that kind of stuff. They don't like any of that because they're, controlling cult. And so when I see that, I'm like, that's somebody like asserting themselves as being like, I'm not gonna do that, so don't even try to get me to join kind of
Hmm.
stuff. Because if she was thinking about joining, people would know by now. Because Scientologists, like, people know. They show up at certain places or are around certain people. It always gives away that they are in it somehow. And so her being like a openly okay with talking about her sexuality is the biggest like thing you can ever possibly see, that she is trying to tell people around her, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
So don't even try to convince me. And it's just interesting to see how people are looking at all this stuff. It just is like endless. Like every single day, there's something where people who are saying it are like 22 and they sound like my grandparents. Like my grandparents aren't even alive. You
Hmm.
sound more slut shamey than my mother, who is a boomer.
Yeah.
Like my mom would never say this kind of stuff about someone, to me especially, because she knows I don't like that kind of stuff. But she would ask me questions about it, but she would like to understand like how people feel or whatever, but she would never come up to me and be like, Sabrina Carpenter's a big slut, or like Sabrina Carpenter's holding back feminism because she likes to wear revealing clothing. That's just not something that she would ever say.
Yeah.
And she's like in her late 60s. She's a
Yeah.
boomer, for God's sake. And she's somebody that wouldn't say that kind of stuff. And so it's like, why are you sounding worse than my mother, who's like 40 years older than most of you, probably?
Probably, yeah. So the other thing, like, because we kind of hinged on fan fiction again, you had a topic you wanted to bring up that, like, revolves around fan fiction besides that stuff.
Oh, you mean the Hunger Games stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. One thing that happened this week also with fandom stuff that was just, my goodness, was um, Allie Hazelwood is a Raylo fan that is very, like, she's a well-known author. She's come out with a bunch of books in the
Hmm.
last few years or so. And I've seen people be like, how is she coming out with so many books? It's because she's just repurposing her old Raylo fanfic into like full-length novels. She's just changing the
It's
format a
like
little bit.
dark romance, I'm guessing, kind of thing.
It's just romance in general. Like I remember watching a review of her first book because it was like huge, like everyone was reading it. And because one of the things with fanfic is that you do a lot of alternate universe stories where you put the characters into different like situations. Like if they're like magical, you put them in like a normal, like your normal, like no powers is what they call it, where they don't have any special abilities, or you
Hmm.
put them into other magical worlds or whatever. And so I know that I forget what her first book was called, but it was like the two of them in, as if they were like students in college and like doing something involving like chemistry or something because they both were wearing like lab coats or whatever on
Hmm.
on like the cover. And the cover is very obviously like, it's so obvious to tell that it's a former Raylo fanfic because they look like Daisy and Adam, just like the way that, and just so many things just from that first book. You can tell that it was a fan fiction. Just if you know fan fiction, the way that they're written and the way that they describe the characters, and there are certain tropes with like different ships and stuff that would be brought up a lot, that were things that I'm guessing Raylo fans would bring up a lot, like how much taller Adam is than her was something that people said in reviews, that the protagonist would mention how tall he was 5 bazillion times. And I was like, yeah, that's something you can pull off in fan fiction, but it's more annoying in like actual published work. But either way,
Yeah.
people really like her. They really like her book. She's come out with like three, I think, in the last few years because she's just repurposing her old fan fiction. And I guess overall, people liked her in general, besides, even if you don't like romance books, they liked her books anyway. But even if you don't like them, they liked her in general because she was someone, I guess, that would use her social media to talk up other authors, to like help promote other authors and stuff like that. Because I don't know how she was published, but I don't know that she was published by like traditional publishing. Because I know that a lot of indie authors are getting more attention because people want to give them more attention. And so she was somebody doing that kind of thing with her social media. Since she made it big, she was trying to help other people. And so she did this interview or something, like a podcast clip, something like that, where they were, for some reason, talking about the Hunger Games. And she just mentioned in the interview that she doesn't like PETA because she thinks PETA is useless.
Hmm.
And the internet, like, of at least the part of Hunger Games internet, lost it and harassed her for saying that so badly that she like deleted her Instagram, or at least did it where you can like make it go away for a while when you don't want to deal with it.
Hmm.
Oh, sorry, Dior's live.
Oh,
I saw
okay.
like invite Dior on like her side like TikTok account to go host now. What if I don't do that?
Yeah, that,
that but that was just funny to see it pop up. But anyway, so yeah, and so she did that. She got harassed by a lot of Hunger Games fans to the point that she made her social media go away for a while because it was so intense, which is, I did that. And so I know what that's like. It's absolutely wild when things like that are that intense. Um,
hmm.
and so I had to talk about that because that's also another version of this sort of thing we've been talking about with like just the alt-right pipeline using art to like completely misunderstand like things that are going on, or like not really thinking about, I guess, the art that people are making. Like we spend, 2.5 hours talking about 3 chapters of a book, and so we're somebody that thinks about every single thing that a
Yeah.
book does. And it honestly fascinates me to the core of my being that people can talk about like an entire book and talk about it for an hour and be done with it. And I'm like, how did you
Yeah.
do that? Like, are you kidding me? Like, I don't know how many episodes we had for like Titan's Curse, for example. But when we read that book, we were reading it for probably like 2 months. And so it was like 2.5 to like 3 hours for every episode. And so we probably spent like 20 hours just talking about that one book. And we've talked
Yeah.
about it more since then. And we're going to talk about it again and again and again before the season like actually comes out.
True.
Um, and it's like that with every book we've ever covered, even the ones that we don't really like. And so it's just, I don't know how people do that. I know that that's
Hmm.
what some people like, but I just like can't do that. And so I just think that it's just so weird when a fandom like comes up against like the issues with how this art that they love was made by how people feel about it, but they like don't, instead they attack the person that says that instead of like thinking about why she said that, because
Yeah.
she wasn't like wrong about that necessarily, but it
Yeah.
she was wrong in the way that like PETA isn't useless in that way. Like he is kind of the one that makes a lot of things happen in that book series, but it just made me remember the I don't like the Hunger Games. And I
Yeah.
don't like how people talk about Suzanne Collins, and it just made me think about how the way that people talk about PETA and Gale, for especially because that's what this kind of like brought up,
Hmm.
reminds me of how people just misunderstand that author themselves like was trying to make a point, and people generally don't seem to even realize like the point that she was trying to make, because I genuinely don't think that most of the people who like it
Hmm.
would, if they understood that, like the ones that don't would be okay with that, because they
Hmm.
don't seem to be okay with it in any other like circumstance,
Yeah.
in life, but they somehow are okay with it in the Hunger Games. And it's just really weird to watch a bunch of people attack somebody that badly to defend a book that literally tells you that if you protest becomes violent, you deserve to be murdered.
Yeah. So what got me with Hunger Games is I am not someone who's read the books at all. I know you read at least the original three,
Yep.
and I did not read any of them. I've had people recommend them to me, of course, but like I don't know why. It just wasn't, it didn't pick up my interest. And then one day, because I like to work late at night because I'm crazy, I was sitting there with my laptop, like second screening back when it was on Netflix, the series. And I got through to, like, I at least started Mockingjay Part 2, but I
Hmm.
never finished it. And I I then started seeing like TikTok content all the time when I was like, I had turned it off because late at night I like definitely wasn't gonna finish it at 2 a.m. when I'm done working. And so I started seeing content where people were very anti-Gale, and I was just like, wait, where is this coming from? I don't understand why people are into PETA but not Gale. And what's funny about it to me is that a lot of the things that people like to argue is the case with Luke is the case with Gale, but it's
Hmm.
not with Luke. Like we part of the reason you and I go so hard on Luke defenders is because some of the things that people tend to think is genuine about him is actually him being manipulative.
Hmm.
And in the war, he had something to gain. Gale doesn't necessarily have something to gain. He is taking up a cause. He is ruthless for his cause. We can say that.
Hmm.
But it is coming from that initial place of my people are being hurt and I don't like that.
Yeah, like Gale is in way more danger doing everything that he's doing in the Hunger Games. He's putting a target on his back when he's doing
Mhm.
it. And so to me, like the way that Jean and I started talking when the the new Hunger Games book that just came out when they announced it last year, I just remember messaging her out of nowhere when she was liking the videos that I was making, ranting about the Hunger Games, and just talking to her about it, where I was saying, like, the whole thing with the Hunger Games, it always drives me crazy because I don't understand how people don't see this, is
Mhm.
that the characters of Peeta and Gale are very obviously stand-ins for certain people in society when it comes to, like, social change, I'll say. And
Mhm.
so Peeta is the, like, you know, theory bro. Like, I'm
Mhm.
going to go to college, I'm going to take some classes, I'm going to spend all my time reading books about French people in the 1500s and what they thought, like, that kind of stuff meant, what they thought revolution or social change and how they thought it would happen. Even in Suzanne Collins' most recent book about Hamish that came out, all of the, like, the quotes that people were like, oh my god, Susan Collins is making a point with this book, they were all quotes from, like, people who were alive in, like, the 16, 17, and 1800s. They're all old white people. And I was like, you're writing a book about revolution and dis and misinformation and how governments use misinformation to, like, supersede the truth, and you have no people of color as the people that whose quotes you're using. Like,
Yeah.
I automatically don't respect you because I'm like, who else but them have been, like, horribly abused by that system working against them. Like, I don't care what some old guy in the 1800s with a stupid wig on thought about this stuff. What about people in the here and now? We're talking about the here and now, right? But she's somebody who's rich, who lives in Connecticut, and goes and went to, like, fancy colleges and got fancy degrees where all they do in those colleges is talk about other white people and what other white people thought about what revolution and stuff would be. And so to her, she writes Peeta as this character that is so stereotypically feminine in just, like, an annoying way. Like,
Mhm.
has him be, like, timid and shy and, like, oh, he bakes bread to the point that his name is literally Peeta. And he, like, oh, he likes painting and he's sensitive and he, like, hides in the forest under a bunch of trees to, like, help Katniss because he's a sensitive person, and he's very obviously supposed to be the one that you're rooting for,
Mhm.
over somebody like Gale, who is positioned always as there being something wrong with him. Like, his anger is always seen to be wrong or bad or like a character flaw or something like that. When in actuality, he's somebody that has been horribly traumatized and abused and marginalized by this horrible system. Like, in the beginning of the second book, he gets whipped to the point that he can't walk, where Hamish has to be the one to stop them because they're going so hard on him.
Yeah.
where they're generally afraid that he might die when that happens. And it's like he's out in the forest his entire life having to search for wild animals to feed his family, and if he doesn't find them, his family won't eat. And
Yeah.
like that's the basis of him and Katniss's entire friendship, is that they are in charge of feeding their entire family, and they're out there trying to help each other find food so they don't starve. And this book is very much set up as like you're supposed to be mad at him and think that he's less than because he wants to actually do something to stop that from happening to more people.
Yeah.
And the reason why I can never take the Hunger Games seriously at all, like I don't care what the books tell me who the villain is or why they're bad or that they deserve to be killed. None of it matters because it is so obvious. Like I was saying this to you and Jean the other day, when I can tell that the writer is like doing things because I can literally when I can like literally see the choices that the writer is making and tell that this is why they're making their characters do this, I can't enjoy the story anymore. So me reading The Hunger Games, I was like, this is so obvious that this is your idea about these two characters. And so I don't care about anything else. I don't care if you tell me that Gale is horrible because he blew up like Katniss's sister on accident. I don't accept that because you're trying to make somebody like him look like the bad one when he's the one that is the entire reason that society moves forward is because of people like him.
Hmm.
And so, and then the other thing with those two characters that always drives me crazy, why does nobody ever acknowledge how creepy PETA is?
Yeah, that's the vibe that I was getting just from watching the movies. So I finished them literally today, so that I had all of the context for the movies, and I still don't understand how they ended up together. Like it's
Yeah.
still, like, so in the second movie, I think, when they were going to the second Hunger Games and they had to pretend to be in a relationship, I took it at face value. I was like, okay, they're pretending to be in a relationship. I did not get the sense at all that Katniss cared for him as more than a friend. I got the sense of like, oh, I'm gonna save our asses, and so I'm gonna play along with this game, even though I don't like you like that.
Yeah. I genuinely don't know when she was supposed to actually figure out if she had real feelings for him because when could she have figured that? I don't know. And like I always go back to this with PETA. I didn't like him in the first book because I was tired of that trope of men being little stalkers towards women in like romantic comedy type
Yeah,
movies and it
it's
being
not
played
cute.
as like something, good or like, oh, they just really like her. Or isn't it cute that he's doing that? Because PETA's whole thing is that he met Katniss one time when he gave her a loaf of bread so her family wouldn't starve when she was looking through his family's bakery's like garbage. And they barely even said any words to each other. And he literally, as like somebody who is more privileged in this world, like he doesn't have to, he gets food every day, like he doesn't have to worry about that kind of thing. He literally just like did that thing where people just turn like a marginalized person they meet into like a limerence thing, where he then becomes like obsessed with her, and says that he's in love with her, but he has no idea who she is.
Yeah.
He's had one conversation with her, and it was barely even a conversation. He's interacted with her one time. He has no idea who she is. She has no clue who he is. In the first book, she has no idea who he is. He just makes up this entire fantasy about her because he sees her struggling.
Hmm.
And like people who have more privilege and stuff, you like romanticize struggle. And so he's just doing that. He's like romanticizing that about her. And in the first Hunger Games, he brings her up in his interview of like, oh, I've been in love with her since I was a kid. And you can say when you're reading the books, and it's definitely presented that way as like, oh, he is saying that as a way to try to have like a storyline about her to try to save her life because he's in love with her. But to me, when I look at that, I'm like, it's basically his fault that she ends up in the position that she is.
Hmm.
Like, Katniss never wanted to be the like symbol of rebellion or anything like that. She just wanted to survive the Hunger Games and then go back to her family. She never wanted to have all of this stuff on her shoulders. And him doing that kind of started this like runaway train of that happening. Like maybe she would have like shown defiance towards them at the end of the Hunger Games no matter what. But in how the story was told, that is how it's set up, is that him doing that with her is the start of all of this stuff. And he is just weird. Like in like there's a certain point in like I can't remember if it was the first book or the second book, but I remember there's a point in one of them that he is genuinely surprised that Katniss doesn't actually have feelings for him.
Hmm.
And it's like, when the fuck was that supposed to happen? Like, she's having to pretend to have feelings for you. She doesn't know who you are. Like, and she's has to have feelings for you in feelings because if she doesn't, the totalitarian government you live after under is going to murder her and everyone she cares about. And like they make it very blunt in the beginning of the second book. They like just tell her, if you don't convince everyone that you're actually in love with PETA, and the reason why you pulled that thing at the end of the Hunger Games was because you're in love with him, not because you were trying to like defy the Capitol, then we're going to kill your mom and your sister and Gale. Like, they don't say we're going to kill PETA, they say we're going to kill Gale because they know that Gale is who she actually loves and cares about because he's her best friend. They actually have a relationship. And like they actually know each other. They've been through so many things together. It makes sense why they would care about each other. And it's just I don't know when she was supposed to figure out that she had real feelings because everything is just pretend. Like she's just performing all the time. And so I don't know when that was supposed to happen to the point that they're like this like angsty couple in the third book and you're supposed to be sad that he hates her suddenly but magically gets over it for no reason.
Yeah,
But like
that's
I don't know
so
when
weird.
that was supposed to happen because like when did she even figure out, when could she have possibly figured out that, how she actually felt about him, because the only interactions they've ever had from the first time they ever really interacted with each other is under like all of the pressure of the Capitol watching everything they do, knowing that they have to do this, like basically act like actors to try to do this nice storyline for people so that the Capitol doesn't do anything to the people they love and care about. Like I generally don't know when that was supposed to happen. And so, and I don't know how it could ever really happen where she actually felt like she was actually making a choice about doing it instead of just feeling like she'd been performing it for so long that she just ended up going
Yeah.
with it at a certain point, especially because PETA is constantly talking about how much he's in love with her and he would do anything for her and he would die for her. And she's like, who are you again? Like, she generally doesn't know who he is. And so it's so weird how, like, in the beginning of the second book, Gale doesn't like PETA. And it's like, why in God's name would he ever like PETA? PETA being involved with Katniss puts her in way more danger.
Hmm.
She's in way more danger. Everyone who's around her is in way more danger because of part of him being there and him being around her in the Hunger Games and them having this whole like there are scenes in the beginning of the second book where Gale and Katniss are talking about how they can't go outside
Hmm.
and be in the same place. Like they can't walk outside and just talk to each other because there's helicopters watching them.
Yeah.
And if they go out there and see them talking like that, even if they're not even doing anything romantic, they might just like shoot them dead because they're watching them all the time, looking for anything, any evidence that she was lying about. They were lying about, feeling things for each other when they were obviously lying about that. And
Hmm.
so, of course, he doesn't like him. Why would he ever like him? And
Yeah.
it's really weird watching how people see like somebody like PETA who is just weird and creepy and doesn't actually know anything about Katniss and literally makes up an entire storyline about her in his head that doesn't exist. But because he's playing this role where he's acting more like feminine than men do,
Hmm.
then it's suddenly okay with him. People think that it's romantic.
It's not
He's
just the
literally a
feminine
nice
men, but
he's
yeah.
just like he's a nice guy. Like hashtag nice guy.
Pretty much. It's not just like the nice men though that they excuse the stalking for. I do remember when I was making Gilmore Girls content that I had to convince people that Dean was a red flag all along.
Yeah.
Like, and it, literally the very first time we meet him, we find out that he watched Rory reading books so intently. He knew what day she switched to books, he knew what books she switched from, and he saw her not look up once from her book while some kid got like a football thrown at his face or something.
Hmm.
And it's like, do you know how intently you have to be watching somebody to realize they didn't even look up once?
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
that's creepy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I don't know, that book series I feel like is like this weird study on
Hmm.
how people can be given things that otherwise they wouldn't support, but if they are given them in a way of like a romantic story or something, they just suddenly go for it when I don't think that most people would. Like the general story with Gail is somebody who has been horribly just harmed his entire life by this very controlling government.
Hmm.
He's as poor as it possibly gets. He's living in the poorest district and is the poorest group of people in the poorest district. And he wants to take the fight to the Capitol because it's the only thing that will actually help anybody and change any of this. And he is demonized for that. He is told, like, the general story of Gale is that he is somebody who got too angry and led into extremism. I saw some the other day being like, isn't that what's happening to like alt right boys right now? And it's like, no, that's not what's happening right now to alt right boys. They're being told to turn against the people that need help. He wanted to help the people who need help.
Hmm.
He's the opposite of that. He is like the people who are Gale are like Palestinians. Like that's genuinely like the easiest comparison you can make for him, especially because of the whole thing they do with how Katniss's sister dies. The way that they're like, oh, he was using children as human shields, and I'm like, where have I heard that before? Oh, right, Israel says that about Hamas literally every other day.
Hmm.
That's right. That's where I heard that before, and I've heard that for so many. The United States has even tried to say things like that about people in the Middle East. That oh, it was hard for us to figure out who was safe and who was not when we were in Iraq and Afghanistan because they would like have little kids give us like grenades and things like that. And it's like, is it because you're completely dismantling their entire society as they know it, and they want you to leave? Is that maybe why they're having to do that? Because the only people you will listen to are children? Because otherwise, if it's anybody else, you just try to shoot them and kill them? It's the exact same thing. Like, it is wild, absolutely wild to me that Suzanne Collins writes this book where the general narrative is that if you are angry at the government and
Hmm.
you try to actually plan and do something about it so that the totalitarian government stops being in power, you are too angry and you are going down a path of becoming a horrible person where you are willing to blow up a child. And if you blow up one singular child, you are ruined for life. All those other people can kill dozens of children every single day. But if you kill one child, that's bad. Or like even the idea of Coin and her being like a rebellion leader, the idea that she would be just as corrupt as the leaders in the Capitol, that is so stupid.
Yeah,
Like,
it felt forced in the very like last parts, especially like with
mm-hmm.
her saying, "Oh, I want to have another Hunger Games to be symbolic of the Capitol." It's like you're trying to tell me she's doing the thing of like it doesn't matter that the power is so big. What matters is who's in power. Like it was very clearly trying to make her that person. And
It's
then it
literally
all
like,
falls apart because then the Capitol doesn't even get this like huge retribution from all of the districts that apparently she was trying to avoid anyway. Like you were doing something a little too weird there, Suzanne.
it's just, like we said this when we were talking about it, it's just white feminism.
Yeah.
Like it's what if you were a white privileged rich person like Suzanne
Mhm.
Collins, how would you think revolution would happen? That
Mhm.
is how they write this book. They would think that people who are violent and like loot at protests are like too violent and need to be stopped. Like they're the people who legitimately actually think that Martin Luther King Jr. wasn't violent. He was violent. There was violence at some of his protests and stuff too. People just pretend like that's not true now that he's dead. because they whitewashed that part to make him a more palatable figure for white people. But there's a lot of things, or he talked openly about the most dangerous people are white liberals. He literally said that in like 1963. And so he's correct. And like still now is the people who try to play the white supremacy games of like, you can like try to protest and try to change things, but you have to be nice about it. And it's like, no, we don't. Like, I will punch you in the face. It's like I don't know if people remember this, but when Trump became president the first time, there was an entire thing where people started showing up at protests just in like ski masks, like white supremacists, trying to make it seem like people who were protesting were violent. Those same people tried to show up at the protests recently, but people watch for them now and know that they're trying to do that, and so they get kicked out when they try.
Yeah.
Um, but they were doing that much more successfully then because it was like a new phenomenon at the time. And they would show up and just kind of like try to make a mess out of things, and people would fight them. And there's this one guy, I forget his name now. I'm just going to try to erase him from my memory so I don't remember his name ever. But he was kind of like the new person that gained popularity when Trump won because he was a Nazi. And he was being interviewed at one of those protests on like Fox News or whatever, and somebody came up to him and punched him right in the fucking face. And it was the best thing that I've ever seen in my entire life. That somebody just came up to him on live TV and punched him in the face, and he just fell on the ground. Like the amount of gifs everywhere across the internet that would, like, Twitter was just that being posted by every single person you have ever met in your entire life, because people were so glad, because it's like, yeah, don't be nice and be like, talk nicely to fascists, punch them in the face. Like, punch them in the face. They don't deserve to be talked to nicely. They want you to die. They're not going to listen to you anyway. Just punch them in the face and let them move on with your day, and you'll feel better. And walk away from them. Don't sit here and try to like debate with them. They're monsters. They're not going to listen to anything you say. They don't think that you have human rights. They barely even see you as a human being. Why would you waste your time talking to somebody like that? And it's just that general idea. Like, Suzanne Collins definitely thinks that punching Nazis is bad because of the way that she just demonizes that sort of thing in her story. And if you're like a privileged white woman that only knows about struggle by listening to men in the 1600s talk about it in old books written in like French and German in school, then yeah, you're going to write a story like The Hunger Games where like Katniss does this, like you mentioned, she does like this big speech to like tell people like the Capitol is bad and the Capitol is corrupt and you need to join me and you need to realize that they're bad. And it's like, I'm sorry, does Susan Collins think that like marginalized people don't know that the government is bad? And that we need this like girl that's being played by a white girl to tell everybody that they're bad? We all know that it's bad. We don't have any power to do anything about it.
Yeah, there's a reason why every time people try to end violent conflict in fiction with non-violence, like very abruptly, it almost never narratively works. And it's
No,
because it's strange. It's strange. It doesn't work because it's a weird thing to do.
well, and it's also a thing of like, I forget who said this. I think it was Maite Lisbeth is her name on TikTok. I really like her videos. She hasn't been making videos recently because, like everyone right now, she's depressed, so be nice to her. But I remember once she started making a lot of content about reading books, and she made a post saying that she doesn't really like reading dystopian novels because it's just what's happened to black people, but instead they make it happen to white people. And I'm like, yeah, that's literally that entire genre
Yeah.
is what happens to everyone else in the world, but making the protagonist white people and creating like this fictional world where those things would happen to people like us, to, like me at least.
Hmm.
Because that's the only time where you have to create a different world in order for things like that to happen to us. And then suddenly people care a lot about it. Like people going to like the protests wearing the clothes from that one show.
Handmaid's
Um,
Tale.
yeah, that stars somebody in Scientology who is okay with everything Trump is doing because that's what Scientology wants too.
Oh
That's
gosh.
wild.
Of course.
Um, but anyway, but like the idea that they think they like every time I see one of those comments, they're like, "Oh, we're turning into gala maid or whatever," is from that book series slash TV show. I'm like, I don't want to talk to you anymore because all of those things have happened to like black people, indigenous people.
Yeah, I mean, we literally talked about Adriana Smith earlier. Like,
Yeah.
it was just yet another gynecological experiment on a black woman.
Yeah,
Like,
and like when black people were being slaves, you think they got to choose who they wanted to have sex with? Like they literally used them as like cattle. Like they would just impregnate them and have them have kids as a way to just have more people to work on their farm.
mhm,
Indigenous people were treated the same way from the time that Columbus and people like that came over. They were treated like that in the same way. And so it's just ridiculous to have to use like a fictional show to compare to like women's bodies being controlled when the US government has been sterilizing people like that for so long and just been going after them in that way and using them like just like a factory to have babies for
mhm.
so long. And it's like it's just you don't know that because they're not people that look like you. And it's just like that frustrating thing of the Hunger Games is literally like Suzanne Collins is the biggest like punk in the entire world because she in the original story she describes their skin in a way that made me think that they were indigenous people, and especially how they're like hunting and things like that. I was like, okay, this seems like an indigenous narrative because nothing in the Hunger Games is like, you know, hard to figure out. It's very obvious that the
Yeah.
Hunger Games world is supposed to be the United States. Like people act like all this stuff you have to like piece it all together. It's the easiest thing in the entire world to like figure out. Like I just started yelling when I found out that they have Hamish's birthday be the 4th of July and that the 4th of July is like the reaping day in the Hunger Games. And people say these things as if they're putting clues together. And I'm like, I know you're not this stupid to act like that's like something you have to like figure out. Like, that is so obvious. It is stupid. It's just
Yeah.
stupid how obvious what she's going for is. Like, that you don't even have to like spend any time making any effort to figure out what she's going. Obviously, it's like about the United States. Like, it's just stupid that people act like, oh, I figured out her like clues. And I'm like, I don't think something being said on the 4th of July is a clue. That's just like an anvil falling on your head.
Yeah.
Um, just telling you really aggressively what she wants you to think. And like you don't even have time to like actually use your brain because she just tells you so in such an aggressive way that there's no other option for you to think about. And it's just I just don't even know. Like it's just really frustrating when I think about that book and how people look at her as if she's like this revolutionary figure or that her book is about revolution or every time she writes a book it's because she has something to say. And I'm like, literally every author on the planet, that is what they're doing. They don't write a book unless they have something to say. And so I don't know why you think that she's more special than everybody else.
Mhm.
And it's just like this weird place where society right now is very focused on finding flaws in people, but here's this like very rich woman that is never in the public eye. She never posts anything on social media. Her book series is essentially bastardizing the stories of Palestinians and Israeli people, and she has never ever ever said anything about that ever. Like the internet has called Rick Riordan a Zionist when he wrote a blog 2 weeks after all of this broke out on October 7th, saying that Palestine needs to be their own state, that Israel hurting them is not going to solve anything, is going to make everything worse, and that they need to stop right now, and Palestine deserves to have their own state and their own nation. There are people calling him a Zionist when he said that, when there was still propaganda out there that Hamas cut off the heads of babies. And he still said that anyway, even though all of that propaganda was still out there and hadn't been disproved yet. And nobody says anything about Suzanne Collins. They just like let her pass it by because what, she wrote a story that you like? But
Yeah.
the story is like the most unrevolutionary thing you could ever possibly imagine. Like, I don't, this world is just stupid. Like, it's just, I don't like calling people stupid, but it's just stupid, like the way that it's presented, that like the things that Katniss does is just that she's forced to do these things and that you're just supposed to like PETA because he's there and because he bakes bread, I guess. And her best friend deciding to try to actually fight back so that everyone he loves doesn't die means that he's a horrible person. And just like the thing that I like lost it over with talking to you today was just the plot point they have about Coin saying that she has to like set up Snow for being the one that actually killed kids. Do you guys know that Snow is the one that killed those kids the entire time?
Hmm.
Like, the reason why they're in the Capitol is because of him. They're there because of him.
Yeah.
The reason why the rebellion exists is because of him. They're in the Capitol trying to say, like, overthrow him and kill him because he's such a controlling leader that if they don't, he's going to kill them all, like he just destroyed the entirety of District 12. They are forced to do this because if they don't do this, then he's going to kill everyone. And somehow there's the idea that there is even a plot in that last book that Coin is secretly the bad one because she, like, made it look like he was the one that killed those kids, but it was actually her. Like, it was always him. What do you mean that she set it up to make it look like he was actually the one in charge, but it was actually her? It's always him. Like, just the idea of that is crazy. That's like saying that, like, with all of the, like, ICE raids right now, that's like getting on TV and being like, it's Cory Booker's fault that all of these ICE raids are happening because he could have done something more to stop it, and killing him instead of killing Donald Trump, who is the person that is actually in charge for everything. It does not make any sense. It is like insulting to say something like that. People, if somebody said that, they would sound like a crazy person. Nobody would listen to them because they would know, like, that's not fair to say that somebody who is trying to do things but is being stopped by somebody that's trying to kill everybody is somehow more responsible than the one that's actually in charge of doing all of these things. But it's like that is the obvious storyline you're supposed to believe. You're supposed to be glad that Katniss kills her instead of killing Snow, which is the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life.
I mean, the only reason I was glad for that was because a bunch of people from the districts came up to him, and like maybe that was more just of an
Yeah.
execution for him. But like, I remember being confused of like, I feel like I was manipulated by her saying she wants another Hunger Games to wanting all
Yeah,
this.
even that like seems like she was trying to me that seems to imply the idea that Coin being in charge and wanting to be in charge of this rebellion, that she had to be, susceptible to the same lack of morals and stuff like Snow was. That, and that's like something that people in privilege tell themselves genuinely, that like people who don't have the things that they have, that if they were in this position they would make the same decisions. Like, oh, if you had money like I do, you wouldn't help other people, or you wouldn't give it all to charity, or you would like play it in the stock market, or you would do all the things that I'm doing instead of actually helping people. You would also buy a really big house and just stay there in that house and never do anything to help anybody and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, no, I wouldn't. Like, if I had a bunch of money, I would make 47 different charities to help all the different things that I care about. I would literally give money away to anybody who asked me for it. Walking down the sidewalk, I would just give money to homeless people. Like,
Yeah.
I would just give things to people. Like, I do that now when I don't have any money. Like, and I don't say this to be like I'm such a good person, but it's just when you are very privileged with money and you don't actually interact with anybody who isn't, that's the kind of thing they convince themselves of to like feel better about the decisions they make in their lives. Genuinely, that's the stuff that they do. They don't really interact with the people whose decisions they're making hurt very much. And so they tell themselves, well, we're just as bad as them. But like, we're not. We're the opposite. Like in what I was gonna say was in 2020 when all the lockdowns and stuff were going on, I didn't have any money. I worked at a job that made like 14.50 an hour at the time, and my money was really messed up from being unemployed and in my treatment program for like 3 months at the end of the year before. I was like, I hadn't had cable, or I hadn't had internet in my apartment in like 9 months by that point because I couldn't afford it, where they just like turned off my bill for good.
Oh my
And
gosh,
until I
yeah.
got like my tax return that next year, where I finally got internet in my apartment again for the first time in almost like a year. Like, my sister is the one that turned it on again for me, and she paid for the first couple months for me so I could have it again. But I didn't have anything. I sold all of my belongings that I could sell to try to pay my rent. And so I didn't have anything. I didn't have any money. And when COVID stuff was going on where everything was locked down and when I would get like food delivered to me, I would pick things, but I would tell the delivery person, like, I know how the stores are. So just like if there's things that aren't there, just grab whatever seems close to what I want and I'll be fine. I won't be upset with you because I know that there's not anything in the stores. And, and they would bring me whatever. And so some of the things they would bring me were stuff that I knew I wasn't going to eat, but they were like non-perishable items, like things that wouldn't go bad. And so there was this homeless guy that would be sitting in like the stairs of like the opening part of my apartment building at the time, because that was when a lot of shelters had COVID going through them like crazy.
Yeah.
And so it was generally dangerous for homeless people to be there. And it was March in where I live. And so it's too cold here in March to really be fully outside all the time. And so he would just sit in our like stairs and during like the nighttime hours. And he would always leave in the morning. And he would just kind of go in there at night when most people come in from work and stuff and aren't going to leave anymore. And so I would go out there and I would just take the thing, like the food that I had that I knew I wasn't going to eat, and I would just put it in like a bag and leave it out by the stairs. And I would just act like I was leaving it for somebody else to pick up and just walk away. And he would always take it. And I wouldn't say anything to him or like tell him to do that. I would just leave it there. Like there was one time that I ordered pizza and he ate it and I just ordered a new one and then took the rest that I didn't eat and just left it out there so he could eat it. Because I'm like, you can eat it. I don't care. Like there was a couple times I literally went out there looking for him and just gave him like the leftover food that I had that I knew I wasn't going to eat. Because I'm like, you are actually starving and you're not going to eat. And so I'm just going to give it to you because you have no other way to get this right now during COVID times when everything is shut down. And so like I had no money at all. And I was doing that to try to help somebody because they didn't have anywhere else to go. And my landlord of my building kept trying to change the locks to the point that people who lived in it like me couldn't get in because they didn't like that he was getting in the building. Nobody else in my building cared about the fact that he was in there. It was only our landlord that made a big deal about it. Everyone else was fine with him being in there. He's like, he's not bothering anybody. Like
Yeah.
he just sits there and then leaves in the morning. I don't care what he's doing when it's dangerous to be outside because he could get COVID and die. And so it's like that's the way that people actually are when they haven't had anything and then they get access to some things. We just want to help people most of the time. And like the GoFundMe's that go around social media are so successful because you just see somebody that needs help and so people just want to give them something in some way.
Yeah.
And so when I see that whole story of like coin and stuff, it just feels like that's her trying to like almost convince us like, oh, if like the rebellion people got power, they would be just as corrupt as the people they're fighting against. It's like, no, they won't. No, they won't. Like, maybe, but there's no guarantee of it. And you're trying really hard to convince me that they will. And I'm not going to believe that.
Yeah.
I'm just not. And it's just also just like silliness because it just detracts from the people in the story that are actually doing the most depraved stuff by making her more, like, people are more mad at her than they are at like Snow. Like they're generally more mad, like Katniss as a character is more mad at her. And I'm like people might be mad at this, but I don't care. Like Katniss killing her instead of Snow is the most selfish thing in the entire world. Like, what are you doing? Like, this person has killed millions of people. He has destroyed your entire society. And you're not killing him just because of your own, like, revenge because you're upset about your sister. Like, if the Hunger Games was in any way relevant, there would have been another uprising over her not doing that. Of like, can you imagine like watching somebody do the things that that person did to you, seeing a chance for them to like die in front of you so you know that they'll never do that to you again, and the person who does it, who's the symbol of the rebellion, takes out somebody else instead who isn't that person, and then afterwards they're found not guilty and they just get to leave and live the rest of their life as if they never did anything and they never did that.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what do you mean? Like, in any other situation, people would be really upset about that because it's like, you just betrayed me. you're the symbol of rebellion, and you had a chance to like do that for everybody, and you chose not to just because you're upset about your sister. Um,
Yeah.
like I understand you're upset about your younger sister. I have one, and I would like rip somebody's head off if they tried to even hurt her. I generally have done that for many years of like scream at people when they've tried or even brought up the idea of not liking her or anything. And she's done the same thing with me. Um, but still, at the same time, it's like this is such a bigger thing than you. This is like an entire movement of your entire country trying to get themselves together again. And you're a symbol of that happening and you just messed it up.
Hmm.
And it's like your own anger and grief isn't bigger than your entire society trying to figure out themselves again. But it's
Yeah.
like in this story that's like the priority. Um and it's just so weird. I just always find that whole thing so weird, especially with a new book that they like there are people every I keep seeing posts being like this happened in this book, so why did she write it this way in the original trilogy? It's like because she didn't know she was going to write this book. Like
Probably.
she's not like this like master where where she had this all planned out or anything like that. She just like wrote things in the new book to call back to things she's already written. I'm like that's really easy to do
Yeah.
because you already wrote it all. You know what you're calling back to.
Yeah, she's exploring characters that we already know about.
Yeah, like it's a lot harder to go forward in your own story instead of going backwards because you can just do callbacks to things that you know are going to happen in the future because you wrote it already. It's a lot harder to go forwards in your storyline because you don't know, because you haven't written anything yet, and so you don't know what's there. It's very
Hmm.
easy for her to like make Hamish's birthday the 4th of July and like make more meanings like that in his general story, that because she already wrote all those things in the original trilogy of the books, and so it's just so easy to do that. But fandom just likes to do this thing of like, oh, they planned everything out from the beginning. I'm like, no, she didn't.
Yeah, she probably just got a lot of money from the first three. Was like, I'm gonna keep writing these. But
Yeah.
to kind of get back to, we brought this up because of somebody getting harassed off the internet for it. And I guess our point is that, like, in this case, there really is a different read of it. There really is a different, like, way to interpret it. And I know we're like, people will yell at Luke people in the Percy Jackson fandom and stuff, but like, we're still using text, and it feels like sometimes people, I don't know, they're falling for what she wants them to think of the story a little bit too much.
Yeah, well, it's like a thing of when you're reading a book, there's if you kind of still use like your brain in that way, you can read a book and be aware that this is what the author wants me to think, but you always have the choice of whether you want to go along with it.
Hmm.
And like Allie Hazelwood is like a Raylo fan. If people saw PETA the way that PETA actually is, she would probably like him
Hmm.
because he is like that weirdo guy like Kylo is. He's not as bad as Kylo obviously when it comes to murdering people, but still he's kind of this weird creepy guy that watches Katniss and just finds a way to get close to her and is like all over the place and is generally surprised that she doesn't have real feelings for him when is she supposed to ever do that? She has no idea who you are and the only time she's ever interacted with you is when your government's trying to kill you. But like he's generally surprised by that. That's something that Kylo would definitely do. And so if people looked at like PETA the way he really is if you like take away kind of the author's wants for what she wants you to think of him, then she probably would like him as a character, but because people talk about him as if he's this like soft boy who never does anything wrong and is like the sweetest person ever and is like the best partner, and they think that like real or not real is like the most romantic thing they've ever heard and things like that, because that's how people talk about him, she thinks that they're boring. And it's just a general thing of when you read a book, you can like look at it and see the author's narrative, but you can also decide like, no, I don't agree with this. And so like yeah, that's what I did with the Hunger Games. Like when I was reading it, I was like, I know what you want me to think, but I don't accept this because I live in my reality. And I know that what you're saying is not true. Like how you're saying this would happen, it wouldn't happen this way. And
Hmm.
so I get that this is what you want the storyline to be, but I just know that I don't accept this because it just doesn't feel real to me, because I can see how you're making decisions because you want this like kind of philosophical argument that you're doing with these two male characters. That's what you're trying to do with them, and so they don't really feel like people some of the time. They more just feel like an essay you're writing about like the different like ways that revolution could happen. In the same
Yeah.
way that like when we read Song of Achilles, like the in the beginning of Song of Achilles, and then when they're talking about sex workers, but they're not calling them that, and they basically say that Patroclus is gay because he doesn't want to rape sex workers. Like nobody describes it that way, but I'm like, that's what's happening in this book. Like these are women. The only thing they do are have sex with men. There's no way that they have any choice in doing that. They're 13 years old, and Patroclus is somehow the only one that doesn't want to have sex with these girls. And they very much make it seem like the fact that he's gay means that he's somehow exempt from wanting to do this sort of thing with women, which like that's not true anyway, like because that's more about like power than actual like
Hmm.
sexual desire. But it's also just like a weird thing that like a 13-year-old boy wouldn't want to do that with an older woman unless they don't have any sexual attraction towards them. Like what if a 13-year-old boy just doesn't want to rape a girl that they don't know, or like have sex with a girl that's a total stranger? You're 13. like
Yeah.
like 13-year-old boys definitely don't want to do that sometimes on their own, not because of their sexual orientation. And so when I read that story, I was like, this is really weird that they're talking about sex work in this way where they're not talking about them as if they're really people. And they're all these like his like Achilles' parents, his dad, and all these other adults around them are pressuring them to have sex with these girls when they're in seventh grade, in our world, like just to show how young they are. And I was reading that and I was like, this story thinks that I shouldn't care about this, but I do care about this. And I think that this is really weird that they're bringing it up like this, and it just made me question like the setup of that story from the very beginning of like, I don't like that you're talking about this like this and acting like it's not a big deal, or talking about this like this and acting like it's not a big deal, or show like in those scenes when like the parents or the adults are pressuring them, you're not supposed to think that they're pressuring them. You're supposed to think like this is just how society was back then. But
Yeah.
when I read them, I'm like, this is them pressuring these little tiny boys to do things
To be a
way,
man.
yeah, way, way before they should. Like 13-year-old boys back then weren't somehow magically more mature than they are now. They're still the same. It's just people who wrote about them made it seem like they were more adult because they were the ones writing about their own traumatizing childhoods. And but it's that whole thing. Like when we read the end of Song of Achilles, we were supposed to think that it was a tragedy that Patroclus died and that Achilles and Patroclus were like epic loved ones that were going to find each other again in the afterlife, and that they loved each other, and Patroclus was dying before Achilles and him could really be together was so sad. When we read that, we were like, Patroclus is in a toxic relationship. Can he dump Achilles and literally be with literally anyone else on this planet?
Hmm.
And then we were sad that his whole life was wasted trying to help somebody that doesn't treat him right. And
Yeah.
so like even if Song of Achilles obviously didn't want us to feel like that, that's how we felt when we read that anyway, because we could even if you recognize what the author is doing, you can decide whether you're okay with it or not. Like that's like people talk about like media literacy all the time. That is what that